Chapter 26. Outside the secret forest. As the barrier dissipated, it naturally attracted the attention of the patrol guards stationed here. "Look, the barrier. What are you standing there for? Go inform the lieutenant." Not long after, Nancy rushed to the scene, but her face looked a little ugly. At this time, more than 8 hours have passed since the barrier was opened. From 9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon now. After such a long time, who knows what has become of it? When the barrier dissipated, was there any unusual movement? Nancy asked. No. We didn't do anything, and the barrier suddenly dissipated. When these words were spoken, many people around looked ashamed and helpless. In one day, the reputation of their Sicheng patrol department plummeted to the bottom. Although they were stationed here, they could only watch and could do nothing. They currently have no idea why the barrier disappeared. Nancy sighed and said, "Anyway, the most important thing now is to save lives." However, to be on the safe side, she first sent a geomancy master with strong perception to conduct a thorough search of the area. She is now a little stressed out about this kind of situation, fearing that there may be some conspiracy. The results came out very quickly, and fortunately there was no so-called bomb by the Crescent Moon organization. In the forest, in addition to the raging fire, there were also many panicked candidates waiting for them to rescue. Time counts. Nancy immediately gave the order and launched a rescue operation. Soon after, batches of candidates were rescued by the patrol and security department, and a large number of rescue personnel were arranged. In addition to putting out forest fires, aircraft were also searching the air for the candidates who had died. The entire secret forest within a radius of several kilometers is under martial law. It can be said that not even a mosquito can fly out now. Outside this woods, a temporary rescue point has been set up. The rescued candidates are all receiving treatment here. Fortunately, most people only suffered minor injuries, and most of them suffered mental torture. Although some of them were angry that the patrol department took so long to rescue them, they were finally rescued. You still have to say thank you. However, in response to their thanks, the soldiers from the patrol department did not seem to be grateful. Instead, they looked embarrassed, which puzzled them. A soldier explained, "You are wrong. It was not us who broke the barrier." What? According to the analysis of the professionals in the team, the barrier seems to have been broken from the inside. Many people were stunned when they heard this. In other words, the patrol guards did nothing? Or did one of us break the barrier? Who is it? The barrier technique has always been synonymous with high-end in the world of magic, and it represents another way for humans to control the power of the world. It can be said that any barrier caster is a hot commodity. Having been influenced by the environment since childhood, they had no intention of resisting the barrier at all. It seems that the only thing they can do is wait for rescue from the outside world. Now someone told them that the barrier was actually broken from the inside. How could they not be shocked? Many people can't help but think of a few faces. Judging from the level of this martial arts exam, only these few people are capable of breaking the barrier. Jing Yang, Su Yu, Yun Xianer. Of course it's Su Yu. Just then, someone shouted and everyone looked over. When they saw the appearance of the person coming, many people exclaimed, "Isn't this Wu Tong? What happened to your hand?" Wu Tong participated in several military examinations and was quite famous among many candidates. His arms and head were wrapped in a thick layer of gauze, looking quite miserable. "It's a long story." He sighed deeply. As the sun sets, Wu Tong leans against the door of the carriage, with a look of regret on his face. His weathered face is full of stories. If you smoke a cigarette at this time, it will be a fatal blow. Wow, I have to say this scene is quite handsome and everyone's interest was piqued. Old Wu, tell us about it. Yeah, you said it was Su Yu who broke the barrier, is that true? That must be true. Wu Tong widened his eyes. Afterwards, Wu Tong told the story of what he had encountered in the jungle. Of course, some changes and deletions were made appropriately. For example, when he first met Yingxian, he did not act out of curiosity, but rather he judged that there was something fishy going on based on the strange behavior of Yingxian and the others, so he followed them all the way. Including the subsequent escape, it was certainly not out of fear, but to find help. He fought and retreated, and was evenly matched with the silver thread. Unfortunately, due to a mistake, the opponent seized the opportunity. He was about to die here, but unfortunately he ran into Su Yu. What a coincidence, someone asked. It's just a coincidence. Wu Tong couldn't tell them that he had been robbed by Su Yu and that's why he ran this way on purpose, right? That's so embarrassing. The rest is simple. It happened in a flash. Su Yu came down from heaven like a god and saved him from the water and fire, and killed Yin Xian in just a few rounds. The whole incident is generally fine, and the merits outweigh the flaws. Although there is some exaggeration, most people agree with it. Because many people saw Su Yu and Yun Xian rushing towards the sea of fire without hesitation. As for Jing Yang? Sorry, I'm not familiar with him. Where do you think they got those burns? Those who do not ask about Jin Jiang's ancestors are doing him justice. I told you, Cheng Felan is so violent, there must be something wrong with her. That is. It has to be Su Yu. I've been optimistic about him since the ring battle. He is indeed a dark horse. Of course not. Wu Tong smiled brightly, as if praising Su Yu was the same as praising himself. Everyone agreed that it was Su Yu who broke the barrier, and their hearts were filled with gratitude. At this time, someone suddenly raised a key question, by the way, where are Su Yu and the others? Oh, yeah. We've been out for a while, why can't we see any sign of Su Yu? When Wu Tong heard this, he was stunned for a while, then he thought of something and turned away. The injured people looked at each other and sighed. Half an hour later, Wu Tong paced back and forth outside the tent, looking worried. Dude, can you please go somewhere else? You're almost making me dizzy. There was an old man lying on a stretcher nearby who couldn't help but speak. Wu Tong sighed and said, I am so anxious. It has been so long and I still don't know where Su Yu and the others are. The delay in seeing Su Yu completely diluted his joy of being rescued. He had found people from the patrol department more than once to ask about the whereabouts of Su Yu and Yun Xianer, but the answer he got was that they were still searching hard. Su Yu and others' communicators could not be contacted, and the display showed that they were out of signal area. The longer time passed, the more anxious Wu Tong became. Sadly, there was nothing he could do except wait. Look, the search party is back. Hearing this, Wu Tong was in high spirits, and immediately ran over and asked expectantly, Excuse me, do you know where Su Yu is? The patrol guards shook their heads, looking helpless. Wu Tong lowered his head in disappointment. The team member patted his shoulder and comforted him, Don't worry, Lieutenant Nancy and Instructor Qin went to look for him personally, and there should be good news. Wu Tong looked in the direction of the secret forest and sighed. I hope so. Chapter 27. Deep in the forest. The fire was temporarily put out, and thick smoke rose from the woods, covering the sky. There was a burning smell in the air. Nancy and Qin Ziyuan walked through a large area of charred land and came to an open space. Crack! A half-burned branch fell to the ground, emitting some black smoke. Qin Ziyuan walked forward quickly, looking nervous. Nancy hadn't seen him so anxious in a long time. But Qin Ziyuan suddenly squatted down, pinched the dust under his feet with his hands, and analyzed, there must have been a battle here before. With his rich experience, he had already realized that something was wrong with this place. And this is where Su Yu and others disappeared. Nancy nodded. Somehow, she felt an inexplicable palpitation staying here. It's like something has been wiped out here. Qin Ziyuan closed his eyes and felt it for a long time before he stood up. He suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and said to Nancy, There should be someone in your team who is proficient in barriers. Can you ask him to come and take a look? Barrier. Nancy's heart moved. After thinking for a while, she immediately responded, You mean, Su Yu and the others were teleported away by the barrier. She was smart and thought of this immediately. Except for the teleportation barrier, I can't think of how they disappeared on the spot. Logically speaking, even if the person was kidnapped, no matter how fast he was traveling, traces would be left along the way. But after the barrier dissipated, the reconnaissance team immediately entered the forest, but found no signs of anyone going away. This phenomenon of leaving no trace is very similar to a teleportation barrier. Qin Ziyuan was indeed a former high-level geomancy master. In just a short while, he had already made a preliminary judgment. I'll get someone over, Nancy replied. Thank you for your hard work, Xiao Qian. Qin Ziyuan felt a little sorry, as Nancy obviously had more important things to do. But he was too worried about Su Yu's safety. For more than 2 months, he has invested a lot of effort in Su Yu, and Su Yu's potential is obvious to all. How he wanted to witness in person the moment when Su Yu reached the top of the mountain. This is one of Qin Ziyuan's few wishes. What's more, without Suyu, who would drink with this sloppy middle-aged man? So, no matter who kidnapped Suyu, Qin Ziyuan would find him no matter where he was. Now that he had the clue of the teleportation barrier, he felt relieved for the time being. At least the probability that Suyu is alive now is still very high. Nancy looked at Qin Ziyuan, a hint of worry flashing in her eyes. She knew the teacher's character very well. Now, if he gets any clues about Suyu, he would probably go there even if it was a dangerous place. But the problem is that Qin Ziyuan is no longer one of the 3 heroes of Sicheng, let alone the immortal Ziyuan. Now, since he hasn't practiced physical skills for many years, his body has probably become rusty. Nancy's heart was filled with bitterness because she knew she couldn't stop the teacher. Even if Suyu was still alive, the situation was not optimistic. The situation in Sicheng took a sharp turn for the worse in just one day. To put it bluntly, Sicheng has probably become a paradise for beasts. She seemed to be able to imagine the scene of countless people being chased and bitten by beasts in every invisible corner of the city. Suyu was just a junior ruins magician, as small as a grain of sand in this catastrophe. Even Nancy herself couldn't help but feel confused about the future. After parting with Qin Ziyuan, Nancy returned to the camp. As soon as she came back, someone came to see her. "Lieutenant, the medic wants you to come over." "Did he say what it was?" asked Nancy. The officer leaned close to her ear and whispered, "It's about the decapitated body." Upon hearing this, Nancy's eyes narrowed and she said, "I know. The headless corpse is naturally the silver thread." When the patrol officers found the body, they were almost shocked. "I don't understand how such a monster got into the martial arts exam." Later, it was Wu Tong who explained it for them. They said that this was a new type of beast, calling themselves the Silver Clan, and that they were the culprits of this martial arts exam incident. Of course, this information was told to him by Suyu at the time. Wu Tong conveyed it to Nancy exactly as it was. How could Nancy not care about the emergence of a new form of life, especially during this sensitive period? She immediately found the medical team and asked them to keep it separately. "Unfortunately, the conditions on site are too poor and we have to move as soon as possible." As soon as Nancy arrived on the ambulance, the medic complained, "Lieutenant, you're finally here. I was so worried." "What's wrong?" "Although we are not engaged in research work, we also understand the value of this corpse, so we have to evacuate here quickly and find a professional place. This is a new species, and it might shock the entire art circle. Their medical team may be able to save lives, but biological research has to be done by professionals." Nancy smiled helplessly and said, "You also know the current situation in Sicheng. Where is the professional place?" This is also the reason why she is reluctant to leave here. The secret forest is far away from the center of Sicheng and is relatively safe. Alas! The doctor sighed, his eyes full of regret. "If we delay any further, what if something unexpected happens? Since you are all so worried, why don't you just hand over this body to me?" A very charming voice sounded, and Nancy turned around and saw a blonde man. He was wearing a white suit with a gold necklace at his collar. "Who are you?" "Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm from Brilliant Academy and my name is King Yu." He smiled and said, "I am currently a teacher. Huang Academy is the top martial arts school in Jingguo Prefecture, and its teachers are the talented people who stay in the academy after graduation. This is quite a big deal." After King Yu showed his ID, Nancy suddenly realized. The doctor had said before that there was a lack of professional personnel, so she sent someone to look for one, and unexpectedly she actually found a great talent. King Yu studied the study of beast biology, which can be said to be quite suitable for her. During this period, he came to Sicheng specifically for inspection and happened to be nearby. Although it was a bit of a coincidence, Nancy didn't think much about it. What's more, King Yu gives people a very comfortable feeling, with extraordinary conversation and elegant temperament. It can be seen at first glance that she is a top student. King Yu narrowed her eyes, her gaze fell on the broken part of Yingxian's neck, and murmured, "The cut is very smooth. Was it cut by a sharp blade? It doesn't look like it." His physical fitness and strength are very strong, far exceeding that of an average mid-level magician. "Who is he?" Someone nearby explained for him, "It is said that it is a candidate named Suyu." Suyu? A gleam of light flashed in King Yu's eyes, and he remembered the name. At this moment, he looked around and found that everyone was staring at him intently. He was stunned for a moment, then laughed, sorry, my old habit has come back again. This body is very important, Lieutenant Nancy, move it now. Nancy was relieved to leave it to the people of Brilliant Academy, but as if she could see Nancy's worry, King Yu said, you are worried about those students, don't worry, nothing will happen. Go contact the patrol guard headquarters and you'll find out what's going on. Chapter 28. Nancy was ready to go. With these candidates and the troops on the scene. I don't know what news she got, but her face looked very bad and her eyes were a little red. This made her look even more haggard after a busy day. For Nancy, the disappearance of Suyu and others was just the least of the things she encountered today. Because, during the period when the secret forest was sealed by the barrier, the outside world had changed. In just half a day, the situation in Sicheng became out of control. Now almost half of the city has fallen. Under such circumstances, not many people are paying attention to the secret forest. Nancy locked herself in the car. Outsiders didn't know her situation and thought she was overworked and wanted to rest. She didn't dare spread the news for fear of causing panic. I'll tell everyone when we reach our destination, she thought. Nancy's major in college was strategic analyst. That is to say, it is a very unpopular profession to deal with different beasts, target their weaknesses, and study corresponding tactics. After all, nowadays, everyone is talking about strength and power, so who cares about tactics? She is actually not good at fighting, and she follows Qin Ziyuan to learn how to protect herself. Qin Ziyuan did not neglect Nancy because of her talent. Instead, he taught her very attentively. This is why she was extremely grateful to Qin Ziyuan. What a wonderful time that was! Jiachen did not fall, and Qin Ziyuan was honored by everyone as one of the 3 heroes of Sicheng because of his heroic fighting. Unfortunately, all of this is gone forever. Oh, what am I doing? She smiled self-deprecatingly. No wonder older people always like to reminisce about the past. The situation had deteriorated to such an extent that she, as a small lieutenant, was powerless to do anything. But since you are learning strategic analysis, you have to put it to use. Nancy patted her cheeks to sober herself up and put those messy thoughts behind her. Closing her eyes, she slowly stretched out her thoughts. At the macro level, based on the current news from all sides, a specific analysis is given. She had to figure out who was behind all this and what was their purpose. From the Crescent Moon organization to Cheng Phelan's disappearance, from the attack of the Sioux Beast to the martial arts exam incident, and finally to the present, it has evolved into a crisis for the entire Sicheng. She broke down all the questions and clues in her mind and integrated them. This kind of high-density calculation is what she is best at. It was because of this point that Director Ji put her in charge of this martial arts exam. Look down, look down. Raise your consciousness, look at the overall situation, and forget your own name and identity. If I am the one behind this, my goal is to occupy Sicheng, or to put it in a bigger way, to destroy humanity. So what am I going to do? Humans have been able to resist the Ruin Realm for hundreds of years, so their strength should not be underestimated. Especially those monsters among monsters, the Ruins magicians above the special level, and the members of the Platinum Council of the Temple. Each of them is someone who is not easy to mess with. If you want to destroy humanity, you must get rid of the top leaders of the parliament. Starting from this point, if she had to prioritize one goal, Nancy had only one answer. That is the man known as the fastest human on earth, Yunzong Tianshan, Ling Yi. Since Ling Yi became famous, he has rarely suffered defeat. Every time he attacks, it must be as fast as lightning and he will surely win. And even if Ling Yi is defeated and wants to leave, no one in this world can stop him. Theoretically, it is invincible. It was impossible to capture his figure with the naked eye, let alone kill him. Now that the purpose is clear, everything makes sense. The reason why he wanted to sneak into the martial arts exam was to attract Ling Yi. When Ling Yi learns the news, he will definitely rush over. Why? Because Sicheng is not only his hometown, but also because he cannot tolerate such provocation. After getting this result, even Nancy, who was usually calm, broke out in a cold sweat. My mood was as cold as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. Nancy couldn't help but feel scared by the meticulousness and clear purpose of the person who planned this plan. To put it bluntly, this is a decapitation operation. Because of the inertia of thinking about the ruined beast, no one could think of this. But Nancy had a question in her mind. That is, even if Ling Ye is lured here, how can we kill him? She really couldn't think of any solution. More importantly, if you want to plan this action, every step must be linked together and there cannot be any mistakes. At the same time, there is definitely a traitor inside the patrol department or the military examination. Who could this person be? She had no clue. Well, after sorting out all of this, Nancy was not happy at all and she slumped in her seat. It seems that she has sorted out the so-called truth, but what can she do? It can't be stopped now. Because, Lord Ling Ye had already arrived here several hours ago. All Nancy can do now is write this into a report and convey it to the top management. A few hours ago, in the military exam monitoring room. Why do you take it upon yourself? Nancy's roar came from the hall. She was really a little angry. It is totally against the rules for the examiner to contact the temple special grade without permission. When encountering a terrorist attack of this level, it should be handed over to the patrol department, reported step by step, and everyone should work together to resolve it. Instead of reaching the heaven directly. Who is responsible if something goes wrong? The examiner knew he was in the wrong, and he had not listened to Nancy's advice before, so he lowered his head and said in a muffled voice, I just want to solve it quickly. He thought that as long as Lord Ling Ye arrived, all difficulties would be solved. You. Alas. Nancy held her forehead, too angry to speak. However, at this moment, a mellow male voice sounded in everyone's ears. Little girl, don't be so angry, it will accelerate aging. Everyone felt as if there was a flash of lightning in their eyes, and then they found that there was an extra figure sitting on the main seat behind. They all exclaimed, Master Ling Ye. It was Ling Ye. Nancy was also startled, and then she was patted on the shoulder. She didn't even know how Ling Ye got to her. Thank you for your hard work. Tell me what happened. Ling Ye's voice was gentle. The examiner immediately perked up, walked over with a shameless face, and explained the whole story to Ling Ye. Yeah, so that's how it is. It's a small matter. Everything will be easy as long as I'm here. Everyone complimented him, thank you so much, Ling Ye special grade. As expected of Ling Ye special grade. Nancy was disgusted by what she saw, and couldn't help but say, Master Ling Ye, this is most likely a trap. As soon as she said this, everyone around her looked at her frantically. Hey, you're just a small lieutenant, why do you care so much? Do you know who is standing in front of you? It's a trap. Don't laugh your head off. Although Ling Ye holds a high position, he is surprisingly easy to talk to. He didn't think Nancy was being long-winded. He gave her a reassuring look and said, don't worry, they can't react. Maybe there really was a trap, but he didn't care. With his speed, any conspiracy will be wiped out. Anyone who dares to cause trouble in his hometown of Sichang will be killed, no matter who it is. 20 seconds. In 20 seconds, I will put an end to this farce. Ling Ye took out his pocket watch and said confidently. Then with a whoosh, it disappeared from the spot. Chapter 29. Huff, huff, huff. There was a strong wind blowing above the building which was hundreds of meters high. Lord Bai Wang, will the temple envoy really come? Gut, who was like a giant beast, was getting a little impatient and asked Iris in a low voice. Iris stood quietly in the middle of the rooftop with her eyes closed, her hands covering her chest, and the white wings behind her swaying gently in the wind. In response to Gut's question, she replied softly, of course. That man will come, she was absolutely sure. After a long while, Iris felt something in her heart and slowly opened her eyes. She raised her head and looked at the distant sky, where a large dark cloud was gathering and it seemed like it was going to rain. Did you hear that voice, Gut? What's that sound? Gut scratched his head. He didn't hear anything. The sound of lightning flashing across the sky. He's coming. Hearing this, Gut stood up suddenly. The sunlight shone obliquely on him, and his huge shadow stretched out very long, covering almost the entire ground of the rooftop. He looked very serious. Since the White King said this, it means that the barrier that blocks the aura around has been temporarily lifted by her. The attack could come at any time. At this moment, the invisible sense of oppression seemed to slow down time. Gut's senses were infinitely magnified. He didn't know how much time had passed, maybe 1 second, 2 seconds, or maybe a few tenths of a second. Boom! A streak of lightning flashed across the black clouds in the distance, like a giant dragon swooping down. Gut didn't hear any sound, he just felt his eyes flash. A drop of liquid hit his sturdy arm. Is this rain? No, it's blood. When he finally reacted, he saw a man on the rooftop with a hint of lightning on his body. What shocked Gut even more was that right under his nose, Iris was attacked and her entire body was cut in half. That silver-white blood is exactly Iris's. This, when? Ah! A surge of rage immediately swept through Gut's body. His face turned red and the veins on his forehead popped out. How dare you, how dare you! Just as he was about to take action, the man suddenly disappeared from his sight. Noisy! A voice like the whisper of a devil sounded above his head. Ling Ye instantly appeared in the air, put two fingers together and tapped lightly. Lightning strike! Suddenly, a strong bolt of lightning exploded and hit Gut's body. It was as if the supreme thunder god had brought down judgment. The power of this attack was so horrifying that the entire sky of Sicheng was dyed azure blue. Starting from the roof, the layers of tempered glass below exploded like snowflakes. Even buildings several hundred meters high could not withstand such power. In an instant, the solid steel bars and concrete were blown into countless pieces. Fortunately, Ling Ye had spent a few seconds to rescue the few remaining people in the building, so he dared to take action. The super-powerful force to destroy the world was fully displayed at this moment. But what is strange is that the dismembered building did not collapse. It seemed as if there was an invisible force that kept these fragments suspended in the air. After doing all this, Ling Ye did a backflip and landed on a piece of rubble. With his own powerful strength, he suppressed the two enemies in an instant. But his expression did not show any sign of relaxation, instead his brows were furrowed. Something seems to be wrong. The two weirdos in front of him didn't have any human aura at all. Especially that ridiculously strong monster, whose aura was comparable to that of a natural disaster-level beast. And that woman, for some reason, gave him a very familiar feeling. It's really strange. The smoke slowly dissipated, and when Ling Ye saw the scene clearly, his eyelids couldn't help but jump. The two monsters that seemed to be seriously injured stood in front of him unscathed. Although he didn't use his full strength just now, just 1/10 of his strength was enough to seriously injure a special-level warrior. Your Excellency's way of greeting is really warm. Iris brushed the dust off her body and said with a smile. She didn't seem angry and even took the initiative to say hello. Ling Ye's eyes turned cold, and he asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Silver Clan. They are the chosen race created by the God of Ruins. Iris answered seriously. God's chosen race? What a mess. Ling Ye had never heard of it. The martial arts exam, you guys are the ones who are causing this. Yes. Where is the Ruins beast in Sicheng? It's us too. What do you want to do? Iris stared at him and said word by word, kill the member of the Temple Council, Ling Ye. The target is me? Ling Ye was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect the person in front of him to tell him everything so bluntly. Moreover, from the moment he met Iris, he had a strong sense of disharmony, which made him very uncomfortable. He quickly threw away his complicated thoughts. Although he still had many questions in his heart, he obviously couldn't delay any longer. Alas, I boasted before, and now I'm afraid I'm going to be embarrassed. Solve it as soon as possible, then find that little female soldier and give her some hush money. Yeah, that's it. After thinking about this, Ling Ye put on a confident expression and chuckled, kill me? Just you. You'll know after you try it. As the sixth seat of the Temple's Platinum Council, Ling Ye does have reason to be proud. But what he didn't know was that an invisible barrier had risen up as early as when he first cut Iris into two pieces. This barrier took Iris several months of hard work, and it was built layer by layer, making it extremely solid. It is impossible to break it from the inside with Ling Ye's strength alone. She wanted to turn this place into Ling Ye's burial place and exhaust him to death. Ahem. This is the Sicheng Broadcasting Center. Now an urgent news interruption. Due to the death of the chief of the city's patrol department and the rampage of the beasts in the city, the Platinum Council has officially issued an order to fully evacuate Sicheng. The patrol department will arrange a vehicle for pickup, please rest assured. If you missed the evacuation, please stay at home, don't make any noise, and wait for rescue. The retreat is only temporary. We will not abandon any of our citizens. I repeat, we will not abandon any of our citizens. Miho Academy. Su Tong was arranged to board an evacuation bus. Sitting in front of the car window, she looked in one direction, her face full of worry. Sicheng, it's over. She learned from the news that a natural disaster level beast had entered Sicheng, and she knew the name of this beast. The Reaper Jiachen 5 years ago was also the same. This time, it's Sicheng's turn. But Su Yu is still inside the barrier, how can he evacuate? She felt as if a huge rock was blocking her heart. Life is obviously going to get better. At this moment, she began to hate her identity as an ordinary person. There was nothing I could do but watch it all happen. The only thing she could do was to pray. Su Yu, please don't be in any trouble. The temporary command post of the patrol guard in the city. Deputy Director Sun Kizi walked in covered in blood. What's going on? Deputy Director Sun, take a look at this. On the screen was the evacuation notice. Evacuate? What about the people? Sun Chi said angrily. Deputy Director, it says. Okay, stop talking, I get it. Let the brothers cover the people's retreat and save as many as possible. Retreat to Sicheng railway station first. There is a line of defense there. After saying this, he seemed to have used up all his strength and slumped down on the chair. He also knew that if no rescue came, he would have to evacuate. There are too many Su beasts, and they cannot be killed at all, and there are more and more high-level Su beasts. It was said that other cities were also being attacked by the ruin beasts, and he had no idea when help would arrive. I'm not willing to accept this. Who would have thought that the Reaper would appear here? The temple commander in Sicheng is not a true special grade 1, but a quasi-special grade 1. He can still give it a try if he encounters an ordinary special grade beast, but there is no chance for him when facing the harvester. And Director G. Thinking of this, he was so sad that he couldn't speak. An old comrade of more than 10 years. At this moment, a technician suddenly pointed at the screen and said in panic, "No. This is bad. Just now, all the combatants of the 1st and 3rd battalions were killed. He even suspected that the life display was broken. How could they all be destroyed at the same time? How is that possible?" Sun Kizi didn't believe it at all. These two teams are elite troops of Sicheng, led by 4 high-level Susha masters respectively. Even if they encounter a special grade Susha beast, they should be able to escape, right? How is it possible to die instantly? But when the communicator did not send any message for a long time, he became confused. What on earth happened? Chapter 30. Above the castle. In the clouds, there are 2 black spots falling rapidly. It was Su Yu and Yun Xianer who disappeared during the martial arts exam incident. When Su Yu saw the white light, he thought something was wrong, but it was too late. The next second, he and Yun Xianer were teleported to this high altitude. The city of Su under my feet seemed to become extremely small, and only a vague outline could be seen. The highly concentrated urban buildings are so densely packed that they look like a maze. If an ordinary person fell from such a height, he would be smashed to pieces. High in the sky, the wind howled, blowing his clothes and making them rustle. The cold air blew in his face, making him feel a bone-chilling chill. As for Yun Xianer, she was hanging on Su Yu like a sloth, with a look of panic on her face. She completely lost her usual cunningness and trembled in her heart. It's over. It's over. That group of monsters actually possessed such a precious thing as a teleportation barrier. That's too luxurious. Yun Xianer was sure that in the entire Jingguo province, there were no more than 3 people who could create a teleportation barrier. Why did they happen to meet each other? Moreover, as luck would have it, he was teleported to the sky. Apart from her and Su Yu, no one else saw Jing Yang and the others. So, this is probably a non-fixed teleportation barrier, which saves the ritual of engraving coordinates and becomes a random teleportation barrier. Therefore, it was purely bad luck for her and Su Yu to appear at this high altitude. In this situation, no matter how smart she is helpless. Is it possible that I can only wait for death? A feeling of guilt surged in her heart. If she hadn't insisted on teaming up with Su Yu, perhaps Su Yu would still have survived. But at that time, she really wanted to work together with Su Yu to break the barrier. Why did it turn out like this? Could it be that I am really a plague god? A witch? Yun Xianer recalled that when she was a child, she almost killed a life because she failed to fully master her abilities. From then on, shadows continued to surround her. Witch? I think you are just a witch who can only curse people. You evil BD. Stay away from us. Over the years, she has been working hard silently, usually hiding her inner feelings with a playful expression, trying to break other people's views of her. In the end, it turned out like this. Or, can't do it. In the end, I am still the witch that people talk about. Apart from having a better background, I have accomplished nothing. Now, he wants to kill Suyu. The shadow of her childhood once again overwhelmed her. She smiled miserably, a tear flashed across her eyes, and she slowly loosened her arms around Suyu. This is good too. I am free now. I will never hurt anyone again. The roaring wind slapped against her ears, causing Yun Xianer's face to become somewhat distorted. She loosened her grip and gave up completely. Maybe without this burden like himself, Suyu would have a chance to survive with his strong physique? Given Suyu's personality, will he give up? She couldn't see Suyu's expression, but she always felt that Suyu might still be thinking of a solution at this moment. This is a man with a very strong character and great potential, and he may even surpass Jing Yang in the future. He shouldn't have died here. While she and Suyu were still close, Yun Xianer took out a revolver from her holster. He squinted his eyes and aimed at Suyu. She wanted to pour all her strength into this shot and give Suyu an epic boost. Make his survival rate higher. This way, perhaps her guilt would be alleviated a little. She lightly pressed the trigger with her finger and silently said in her heart, blessing. In an instant, a brilliant beam of light shot out, as bright as a rainbow after the rain. After accurately hitting Suyu, Yun Xianer closed her eyes with peace of mind, allowing gravity to push her to fall rapidly. Stay alive, Suyu. Just consider it as a reward from me for making Jing Yang lose face. I'm almost dead, but I'm still thinking about these things. I'm such a petty woman, haha. Suyu naturally didn't know that Yun Xianer had thought about so many things. But now, he understood. He truly received the emotion conveyed by Yun Xianer's shot. Survive. Unexpectedly, at this critical moment of life and death, Yun Xianer resolutely gave up on survival and passed the only hope to herself. This made Suyu feel mixed emotions and changed his opinion of her. Before, he always thought that Yun Xianer was just a clever girl from a famous family. If there is a chance, save her, Suyu thought. Of course, the most important thing now is to save yourself. In fact, even without Yun Xianer's help, Suyu was 80% sure that he could land safely. It's just that the probability is greater now. After the initial panic, Suyu quickly regained his composure. Don't forget, there is also a moon step among the 6 styles. It can be said to be the most practical skill in the world of pirates. Similar to the Tianzong move, you can walk at high altitudes like walking on stairs. Fortunately, Suyu underwent 2 months of special training, otherwise it would have been a waste. He first opened his body into a big shape to reduce the air resistance during the fall. The descent lasted for more than 10 seconds, and after passing through the thick clouds, Sichang became clearly visible. Suyu estimated that he was still about 500 or 600 meters from the ground. It's time. He exerted force with his right foot suddenly, just like he had done countless times in training. Moonwalk, air walk. Bang! 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 Continuous gas explosion sounds were heard, and circles of white smoke appeared in the surrounding air. Success! Suyu said in surprise. He successfully used the moon step to stop his fall. Without any hesitation, he rushed towards the lower right. Because Yun Xianer's head was falling vertically, her falling speed was much faster than his. He had to be faster. The strengthened Suyu had a faint halo covering his body, and he was walking in the air so quickly that he looked like a yellow flash. Hurry, faster! He looked more and more anxious. 50 meters, 40 meters, 20 meters, gradually I can see clearly. But at this time, it was only a dozen meters away from the ground. If I can't get there in time, I'm afraid Yun Xianer will die soon. At the critical moment, Suyu swooped down as fast as lightning and finally intercepted Yun Xianer when she was about to fall to the ground. In order to relieve the force, he rolled dozens of times on the road while holding Yun Xianer, and finally crashed into an abandoned car. Hiss! Suyu took a breath and felt a pain in his back. He stood up and checked Yun Xianer's condition. Yeah, still alive. Maybe he fainted temporarily due to the impact just now. All in all, he managed to get through the stage without any major problems. If it were any other junior magician, he would have probably been waiting to die. It was not until this moment that he realized with horror that the noise they made when they landed was so loud, but there was no movement around them at all. There was not a single pedestrian on the nearby streets. If this kind of thing happened normally, he would probably be treated like a monkey and watched by everyone. It was eerily quiet all around. This eerie silence makes people feel eerie, as if the whole world has been drained of its vitality. Everywhere you look, you see dilapidated buildings. Countless cars are crowded on the road, some of which are still emitting wisps of smoke. The breeze blew a blood-stained beverage can on the side of the road, making a crisp rustling sound, which was particularly harsh in the dead silence. An atmosphere of doomsday surged in like a tide, making Suyu a little breathless. He looked around, feeling a little confused. Is this really Sicheng? Chapter 31. It was late at night, and most of the city seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep. The snack street, which was once bustling with people, has become a ruin. The cooked food on the stall had not been taken care of for a long time and had become a bit sour and smelly. A mouse nimbly climbed up, sniffed it, and then began to eat it with relish. There is no trace of human life in the street corners and alleys. Yun Xian'er had a very long dream. In the dream, she fell off a cliff and kept falling. After an unknown amount of time, she seemed to have fallen into a hot spring and was enveloped by the warmth. At this moment, a huge beast emerged from the hot spring, howling towards the sky, scaring Yun Xian'er so much that her face turned pale. Then she woke up suddenly. Where is this? She frantically felt around and asked, am I still alive? It was pitch black all around, with only a hint of dim moonlight filtering through the blinds. Just as she was about to get up, her mouth was covered by a pair of big hands. This moment stimulated her sensitive nerves and she began to struggle in panic. Until a familiar voice sounded in my ears. It's me. Hearing this voice, she unexpectedly felt at ease. Suyu approached her, made a gesture to silence her, and said in a soft voice, when you calm down, just nod your head. Yun Xian'er. Suyu let go of her hand and explained, there is a group of night demons nearby, and they just flew away from here. The night demon is a mid-level ruins beast, but when it reaches adulthood, it can reach the level of a superior one. They look like eagles, with a wingspan of nearly 10 meters, but since they have no eyesight, they rely entirely on their powerful hearing to hunt. They often come out in groups, blocking out the sky and the sun. Yun Xian'er no longer had the energy to care why the night demon appeared in the city. What she cares about most now is why she is still alive. Facing her question, Suyu simply replied, what do you think? The answer is obvious. She opened her mouth with a dull expression, and couldn't help asking, but how did you do it? You can do it if you practice more. Haha, this is a very suitable joke for Suyu. I don't believe you. Yun Xian'er didn't believe this kind of talk. But she didn't know that Suyu was actually telling the truth. Yun Xian'er didn't expect that she would survive miraculously, and all this was thanks to the man in front of her. Suyu, this dark horse that suddenly emerged, subverted her cognition time and time again. Where is his limit? Oh, by the way, she suddenly remembered one thing, that is, she hasn't thanked him properly yet. Suyu, thank you so much this time. SHH. Suyu looked at her with a frown. I'm sorry. She stuck out her tongue. The psychological trauma she had previously suffered was temporarily suppressed by her survival. Her demeanor seemed to have returned to that of the playful and lovely Yun Xian'er. In the following time, Suyu sorted out the current situation for her. Through the news, he roughly knew what happened in Sicheng. To sum it up in a few words, it's all bad news. A large number of beasts emerged from the ground, catching the patrol department off guard. Although they had some advantages in the early stages, as the number of ruin beasts increased, the patrol guard could no longer gain any advantage. The death toll starts from zero and continues to accumulate. In the end, when the tragic news of the sacrifice of the chief of the patrol department came, it immediately destroyed the hopes of most people. Originally there was another special grade person in Sicheng, but his strength was not a real special grade, but a quasi-special grade. As for the difference between the two, Suyu is not clear yet. That man was targeted by the disaster-level ruins beast, the Reaper, and was lucky not to die. In just half a day, most of Sicheng fell. The speed was too fast, resulting in many people in the city not having time to evacuate. They were hiding in their own homes, feeling extremely terrified that they would be found and eaten by the beasts in the ruins. Unfortunately, Suyu and Yun Xian'er are also among this group of people. The situation can be said to be extremely critical, and it is no exaggeration to say that it is a life-or-death situation. With the strength of Suyu and his partner, it would be extremely difficult to cross half of the city and reach a safe area. Because along the way, there were countless ferocious beasts waiting for them. Yun Xian'er was despaired after hearing this. It would be better to let her fall to her death. It's better than becoming food for the beasts in the ruins. Of course, there is also good news. While Yun Xian'er was in a coma, he contacted Sister Nancy and Brother Qin. After learning about their situation, Qin Ziyuan said that he would definitely come to rescue him, and after discussing with Nancy, he gave a location. Suyu held his chin and gestured on the ground with his fingers. If you spread out the map of Sicheng, you will find that the place where he and Yun Xian'er are now should be in the south-central area of the city. There are especially many beasts here. However, Nancy discovered through detection that since 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a large number of beasts had left the city. They gather in the southwest corner of Sicheng, near the buffer zone. And that is where the patrol guard headquarters is located. Nancy didn't know what was going on there, but it was a chance. As long as Suyu and Yun Xian'er control their breath and cross a few blocks to reach the designated location, they can be rescued. It is said that there are underground passages left over from the old times. After explaining, Suyu looked at Yun Xian'er and said, "By the way, I heard that President Yun Li will also be here." "My father." Surprisingly, Yun Xian'er did not show a happy expression on her face. She is not a fool. Even a high-level ruins magician like Yun Li had to be rescued so carefully. You can imagine how dangerous it is. You know, there is a Reaper in the city. Not to mention the Silver Clan, the White King and the like. This time, Qin Ziyuan and Yun Li acted on personal sentiment and did not use other resources. Because the main force retreated to the train station in the north of the city. "I say, can you please ask them not to come? I'm worried." Yun Xian'er frowned, looking worried. "Do you think this is possible?" "Yet, alas." She sighed. Suyu was right. People like Qin Ziyuan and Yun Li were strong-willed and would not change their minds easily once they made a decision. Yun Xian'er is Yun Li's only daughter. Even if it means death, he will save her. As for Qin Ziyuan, I won't say more. Suyu et. The old man seemed relaxed on the surface, as if he didn't care about anyone. But in fact, I value the people around me very much. Everything Qin Ziyuan taught Suyu was actually teaching Suyu how to survive in this world. These valuable experiences are accumulated over a long period of time and are priceless treasures. But Qin Ziyuan taught him without reservation. So, if Qin Ziyuan got into trouble, Suyu would make the same decision. "Tomorrow is very important, let's take turns to keep watch." He and Yun Xian'er had been fighting for a whole day and were both exhausted. For tomorrow, they must keep in good spirits. Yun Xian'er stared at Suyu in a daze. She didn't understand why Suyu could be so calm. "It seems that what we are going to face tomorrow is just a trivial matter. There are countless beasts waiting for them outside. Isn't the night demon that just flew away a good example? Won't you be afraid? Don't you feel desperate? You know, this is no longer their home, but a den where monsters party." Yun Xian'er sat on the ground, buried her head between her knees, and asked quietly, "Suyu, aren't you afraid?" She didn't understand why Suyu was always so calm. Is he a robot? Chapter 32. Fear. Suyu sighed softly. "Of course I'm scared. Do you think I'm a robot?" The biggest difference between him, Yun Xian'er and Jing Yang is that his soul is that of an adult. Adults are best at putting on masks and hiding their emotions. How could he not be afraid? Especially in such a desperate situation. The two of them have experienced life and death together, and their relationship has become closer. Even when playing games, mutual cooperation between teammates is often required, let alone in reality. Suyu's nerves have been tense all day since the martial arts exam began. Emotions need to be released, otherwise, even the tightest bowstring will break one day. A child may have a breakdown because of losing a toy, but an adult's breakdown is often the result of a build-up of problems, the accumulation of one thing after another. Suyu certainly wouldn't collapse, but Yun Xian'er might not. She has experienced too little, and although she can still hold on now, if something unexpected happens in the future, she will probably collapse. Suyu didn't want to face that situation. When Yun Xian'er heard what Suyu said, she raised her head and a hint of surprise flashed in the corner of her eyes. At this time, she clearly felt Soyu's emotional fluctuations. Somehow, she felt much better. She didn't mean to mock Soyu, she just subconsciously wanted to say something to hide the panic in her heart. Hey, Soyu, why are you trying so hard to become stronger? To become stronger? Let's be serious. Yun Xian'er said angrily. To control your own destiny. He didn't want to live a miserable life like in his previous life, burdened by various loans. Therefore, in order to live a different life, he has no choice but to keep climbing upwards. So you also wanted to see what it felt like to stand on the top of the mountain and feel like he was at the top. Destiny. Yun Xian'er whispered. Tell me, can Sicheng be saved? So you hesitated and said, the temple is so powerful, there must be a way. According to textbooks, the temple existed for a very long time. It has stood firm for hundreds of years. The first human being who mastered the power of the universe was born in the temple. This is a very old organization. So you felt that although this attack was full of weirdness, the temple would always have a way to resolve it. Now I can only think positively. Seeing that the topic was a bit dull, Yun Xian'er shook her head and said in a relaxed tone, what do you want to do after you get out alive this time? Exercise. Why is there only muscle in your head? If it were me, I would go to my favorite cake shop and eat my fill. Cakes and desserts are high in calories and will make you fat. It's impossible for a beautiful girl to get fat. The two chatted for a while, and their suppressed emotions were temporarily released. No matter what happens tomorrow, at least at this moment, they are still alive. Yun Xian'er's inner fear was also diluted a lot, so you always has a way. I just need to try my best not to fall behind, she thought secretly. Seeing that the time was almost up, So Yu said, it's almost time, you should rest first, I'll keep watch for the first half of the night. Then I'll leave it to you, So Shen. Yun Xian'er giggled and went to sleep peacefully. So Yu sat cross-legged, and with the rhythm of his breathing, he spread his perception to every corner around him. After 2 days of activities, his attribute panel also changed. Host, So Yu H, 18 Physique, 52 Current Capabilities, 1000 Hands of the Forest, LV1 1178/2006 Style, 3450/6000 Basic Breathing Method, LV1 8000/8000 Heyday. Overall the changes are minor, but better than nothing. So Yu's eyes fell on the column of prime posture, and a hint of fierceness flashed in his eyes. Tomorrow will undoubtedly be the most difficult day since he came into this world. But he had to move on. At dawn, the sun just broke through the darkness. A ray of light squeezed in through the gap between the blinds. So Yu woke up slowly and found Yun Xian'er staring at him with a smile on her face. Morning. What time is it? 6:13. So Yu nodded. In the duo, he is the fighter and Yun Xian'er is the assistant. So it was a reasonable assignment to let him rest in the second half of the night while Yun Xian'er was responsible for keeping watch. When Yun Xian'er was unconscious yesterday, So Yu collected some food. After a simple meal, the two of them cheered up and prepared to set off. The reason why we don't choose to walk at night is because of the existence of the night demon. Once they make any noise, the night demon will attract a large number of beasts and they will surely die. So the risk is lower during the day. Although they were only a few kilometers away from the evacuation point, they certainly couldn't walk in a straight line. You can only take the street corner path. Under So Yu's arrangement, the two men took a formation of one in front and one behind. It was mainly Yun Xian'er who gave him a buff that enhanced his perception. He led the way in front, and Yun Xian'er followed after ensuring safety. Yun Xian'er took out Schwer and took out the bullet inside. This is a crystal clear bullet, or to be more precise, a ruin crystal. Her gun was just made to look like a gun, but its internal structure was completely different from a gun. The Susha circuit inside needs to be maintained by Su crystals at all times. If there were no ruin crystal, this would just be an ordinary gun. After a day of fighting yesterday, plus the final blessing given to So Yu, all her energy was used up. Fortunately, she still had a spare one. But this is the last one. So Yu frowned as he watched, thinking this was too troublesome. In a life and death battle, if I lose the ruin crystal, won't I become a useless person? It's not just that your abilities are flawed, you're clearly full of loopholes. But Yun Xian'er was also very distressed. Although her abilities are incredible, she has too many of them. If you just focus on one path and practice hard, it might be much better. But she wanted the ability to save people and the ability to fight, which resulted in her not being able to master either. How many things in the world can have the best of both worlds? So you didn't say much. At least now Yun Xian'er's auxiliary ability is very useful. As soon as the perception aura came on, So Yu suddenly felt like he had turned on his spider sense. Everything from low-flying birds to rats in the sewers are within his perception range. The world has never been so clear. Experiencing this sense of perspective, So Yu's confidence increased greatly. After sufficient preparation, the two set off. They went downstairs and walked through the street corners and alleys, quietly passing through the ruins. The devastated city made So Yu think of something inexplicably. Qin Ziyuan had talked about the Battle of Jiachen several times when they were drinking together before. Although his description was horrific, So Yu was still unable to empathize with the situation. But now, he understood. Jiachen 5 years ago is just like Sicheng. Today. Chapter 33. So Yu is no stranger to this area as it is very close to his home. If there is anything that So Yu cares about most now, it is the safety of his sister So Tong. Fortunately, he had contacted So Tong by phone yesterday, and he felt relieved after learning that she had been arranged to evacuate. Otherwise, if something happened to So Tong, he really didn't know how to explain to his uncle So Jiancheng. Along the way, the smell of gunpowder and blood was constantly assaulting So Yu's sense of smell. On the road ahead, a collapsed building stood before them, blocking their progress. The building seemed to have experienced a catastrophe and collapsed completely, leaving only ruins and rubble on the ground. After So Yu and Yun Xian'er carefully walked around the building, they were shocked by the scene before them. Yun Xian'er said blankly, "I remember this is Renmin Avenue, right? How did it become like this?" The once spacious road seemed to have been flattened by a bulldozer. The 6 lanes had disappeared, replaced by a kilometer-long chasm. So Yu was equally shocked. What kind of force can turn a smooth road into this? The buildings on both sides were shattered by the impact. The city turns into a village in seconds. There won't be any special grade beasts nearby, right? So Yu's heart sank. Let's go, it's not safe here. Yet. Yun Xian nodded with lingering fear. Many landmarks have disappeared, and So Yu has to find his way by feel. Walking through the ruins, they saw many dead bodies. Not only those of humans, but also those of beasts. There were even many patrol soldiers who died in battle, their bodies lying on the roadside, left to be exposed to the sun. These corpses mixed together make for a hellish picture. Under the attack of this unknown force, no matter what kind of life it is, it will be difficult to survive. Many low-level beasts were attracted by the smell of blood nearby and were gnawing on the corpses on the ground. So Yu squatted behind a wall and counted silently, 1, 2, 5. After walking for so long, it was inevitable to encounter the ruin beast. It would not be a problem to get rid of these beasts, but he was afraid that the noise would be too loud and cause a commotion. Yun Xian'er, who was standing next to her, came up with an idea at this time. After listening to this, So Yu nodded. Although this method is a bit troublesome, it is the safest one. Many low-level beasts move in groups. If one of them howls and attracts a bunch of beasts, it will be troublesome. Yun Xian'er's idea was very simple, which was to use her magic to make these beasts become weak and powerless in a short period of time. Then with So Yu's speed, it was quickly resolved. As rays of light shot out, So Yu followed closely with a brisk step, and his figure disappeared on the spot like a shadow. Shave. He was extremely fast, and with Yun Xian'er's cooperation, he cleared out nearly 10 ruins beasts in no time. Many of the beasts didn't even have a chance to react. Suddenly, his body became weak, his eyes went dark, and he fell to the ground. When the last beast fell, Yun Xian'er breathed a sigh of relief. This was another cooperation between the two. The last time was when facing the barbs, but at that time So Yu distracted the latter too much, so she did it very easily. But this time, we were facing a group of Su beasts, and we had to be careful not to make any noise. It was impossible to say that we were not nervous. So in order to keep up with So Yu's pace, she focused very much. Fortunately, it was completed without any major problems and did not hold So Yu back. Seeing So Yu making a gesture in the distance, she hurriedly followed. "What's wrong?" So Yu pointed to a place and said, "Look." It turned out that he discovered a soldier from the patrol department. The soldier was lying under the rubble and you couldn't see him if you didn't look carefully. However, his life force was extremely weak. If So Yu's perception ability was not strong enough, he would probably not be able to detect it. So Yu carefully carried him out and held his back against the wall. Perhaps this movement woke him up, or perhaps it was due to some other situation. The soldier suddenly opened his eyes. I don't know what kind of horrible disaster he had experienced, his eyes were full of fear. He kept muttering in a low voice, "Devil, there is a devil." Because the sound was so soft, So Yu had to get closer to listen. "Brother, what do you want to say?" "Ghost eyes, the devil has countless ghost eyes." He kept repeating these words, and it was obvious that he had lost all his sanity. Soon, after taking a deep breath, his eyes gradually dimmed, his head tilted, and he was completely dead. Before he died, the soldier looked extremely frightened. So Yu couldn't figure out what kind of experience could make these iron-blooded soldiers so terrified. He silently reached out his hand and gently closed the soldier's eyes, feeling extremely heavy-hearted. So Yu's eyes moved slowly and noticed A3 written on the soldier's collar. There is no doubt that this should represent the unit he belongs to, the 3rd Battalion of the Sicheng Patrol Guard. Not only that, when So Yu looked closely at the soldier's coat of arms, he was surprised to find that there were 3 stars engraved on it. This level is not low anymore. In the patrol department, he is probably at the level of a small team leader. Even people like this. So Yu didn't dare to think about it anymore. At this moment, the sky became increasingly gloomy, as if a huge black curtain was slowly descending, pressing him so hard that he could hardly breathe. "Can I take Yun Xianer to the destination?" The answer he got was dead silence. An hour later, So Yu finally crossed the long chasm. During this period, they encountered several waves of beasts, but they managed to escape them all without any danger. Crossing People's Avenue, they arrived at another neighborhood. Here, they had been walking carefully for a long time, but strangely, they had not encountered any beasts. So Yu climbed up a tall building, looked around, and frowned slightly. "Have you found anything?" Yun Xianer asked. "I felt very strange from the beginning." "How?" "It's too quiet. Where did those ruins beasts go?" "In addition, there is another strange thing. Logically, there should be some people in the city who have not evacuated. Where did they go?" So Yu didn't sense any human presence. Yun Xianer shrugged and said, "Isn't it just right that there are no ruins beasts? Let's take it one step at a time." The two went downstairs and continued on their way. But before they had walked far, So Yu suddenly waved his hand and showed a martial law expression. Yun Xianer immediately held her breath and concentrated, took out Shwetter and followed So Yu with a stern look on her face. On the road ahead, a building collapsed. So Yu could feel that there was an extremely faint breath in this ruin. Seems to be human. A fallen sign on the side of the road shows the location. Muscle House. Chapter 34. So Yu observed the scene for a full half-hour before cautiously walking forward. There should have been a group of buildings here, but due to some unknown impact, they all collapsed. Looking around, there were only endless ruins and mountains of concrete blocks, which was shocking. I don't know how many people were buried underneath. And when he saw the particularly eye-catching billboard on the ground, his heart was shocked and an ominous premonition came to his mind. He had trained here for 2 months, sweating profusely, and met some interesting people, but now, there is no trace of the past. That faint breath was getting closer and closer. When So Yu walked closer and saw the scene clearly, he was stunned. His throat seemed to be blocked by something and he couldn't utter a word. A young girl lay quietly in the ruins. Her face was covered with dust, her originally pretty features became blurred, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. The delicate body was pressed down tightly by the heavy stones, with only a small part of the body exposed. She was barely breathing, and if you didn't look carefully, you would hardly notice she was still alive. In fact, with such serious injuries, she should have lost her life in an instant. The reason she wasn't dead yet was because there was a doll above her body protecting her. The puppet used its own body as a support, bearing the heavy pressure with difficulty, and carried countless pieces of building debris for her. Thousands of pounds of weight couldn't even break the puppet's spine. On this devastated land, the girl and the doll formed an indescribably beautiful picture. Yun Xianer stood there, staring at the scene in a daze, covering her mouth in shock, her eyes unable to hide her sadness. So Yu's expression was somewhat sad. This girl was someone he was very familiar with. The cute and silly Xiaoling, the receptionist at Muscle House. As for the puppet, it is his first actual combat teacher, Tiger is Heike. This was the first time he met an acquaintance since the Sicheng incident, and it was under such circumstances. I feel so uncomfortable. As if she heard some noise, Xiaoling in the rebel said with difficulty, is there anyone? The sound is as soft as a mosquito's buzz, barely audible. It's me, Su Yu. So, it turned out to be, Su, brother Su Yu. Xiaoling spoke intermittently. She seemed to have not met anyone for a long time, and it was someone she knew. She was actually a little happy, with a slight smile on her face. Xiaoling actually can't open her eyes. Tears mixed with dirt and dust acted like glue, sticking her eyelids tightly shut. Su Yu was silent. He seemed to imagine the despair she felt when she was trapped here, with no one responding no matter how hard she cried for help. Yun Xianer couldn't bear to watch this depressing scene any longer. She took out Shuer and released a healing light, then said to Su Yu with some guilt, I can only do this much. This ray of light can at most make Xiaoling feel less uncomfortable, but it cannot cure her. With such a serious injury, coupled with being suppressed for so long, he should have been exhausted. It's a miracle that I'm still alive today. Su Yu nodded and said, thank you very much. With Yun Xianer's help, Xiaoling's condition improved and speaking was no longer so difficult. But Su Yu and Yun Xianer both knew what this meant. After Xiaoling said thank you, she said softly, Su Yu, brother, I have a request. Taking a deep breath, Su Yu said, you say. Tiger is still alive. The core is left to you. She raised her hand with difficulty and pointed at Tiger's chest. Okay, I promise you, I will revive him later. Thanks. After she finished speaking, it seemed as if her only wish had been fulfilled, and her face quickly turned pale. Suddenly, she remembered something and reminded Su Yu, oh, be careful. Be careful about what? Demon. Demon eyes, ghost eyes? Su Yu was startled, remembering that the soldier had also said that. But there was nothing else. After Xiaoling said all this, she left this world quietly with a faint smile on her face. Tiger One had stopped moving a long time ago. A slight breeze blew up the dust on its face, which slowly fell down, as if it was silently shedding tears. Su Yu looked at this scene, speechless for a long time. After a moment's silence, he leaned over and gently brushed the dust off her face. He could no longer do anything for Xiaoling, but at least, he wanted her to have a clean face when she left this world. Xiaoling's tragic experience is the most true portrayal of this world. It was not until this moment that Su Yu truly felt the cruelty of this world. Although he appears calm and composed on the surface, he has always had a sense of superiority deep down in his heart ever since he got the golden finger. I believe that as long as I keep working hard like the protagonist in the novel, I will become a strong person. But at this moment, the bloody situation before him made him realize the truth. Death is just a normal thing in this world. And most people die quietly and are gradually forgotten. Perhaps I am no exception. Yun Xianer saw that Su Yu had been standing there motionless, and became anxious, so she called out to him. Don't forget, they can't even protect themselves, they can't stay here for long. I understand. Su Yu replied with a dry throat. He came back to his senses from the pain and quickly took out the core of Tiger One. Let's go. He took one last look at Xiaoling and left without hesitation. At the same time, in the sky, a round sphere, floating quietly in the air. Looking closer, it turned out to be an eyeball the size of a fist. The strange eyeball was floating in the air, and its sights fell on Su Yu below. 10 o'clock in the morning, Tongcheng Shopping Mall. This is the largest shopping mall in Sicheng, as big as a gymnasium. Su Yu didn't expect that they could arrive here so quickly. Along the way, apart from encountering some low-level beasts wandering around, they didn't encounter any high-level beasts. Thanks to Yun Xianer's reinforcement, they arrived at the agreed location almost unhindered. It was so smooth that even Su Yu felt it was a bit weird. But somehow, he always had the feeling that someone was spying on him, but whenever he stopped, the feeling disappeared. The dead soldier and Xiaoling had both warned him that there was a ghost eye nearby. But since he couldn't see or touch it, Su Yu had no good solution. Just like that, they came to the shopping mall in front of them. Nancy told me that there is an abandoned underground passage under this shopping mall. Yun Xianer came closer and whispered, this is it. Su Yu looked around carefully and walked in only after making sure there was no danger. Strangely, Qin Ziyuan was nowhere to be found. Could it be that he hasn't arrived yet? Everything in the mall was still functioning normally and looked no different than usual, except for the elevators running up and down. It's quiet. It's so quiet. So you used to work as a temporary worker in a shopping mall. In his memory, the deathly silence only appeared in the early hours of the night when the mall closed. He was inexplicably a little irritated. What on earth is going on around here? Did I miss something? But no matter how hard he racked his brains, he couldn't think of anything else. So you? At this time, Yun Xian'er poked him and asked in a low voice, "What is that?" So you looked in the direction she pointed, and saw a spherical object quietly floating in the gap between the second and third floors in the center of the mall, which was out of tune with the surrounding environment. Is that a balloon? Wrong. He looked carefully and discovered that it was actually an eyeball as big as a fist. So Yu's heart skipped a beat, as if struck by lightning. He suddenly recalled what Xiaoling reminded him before she died, "Be careful, ghost eyes." Chapter 35. That strange eyeball was just hanging in the air. If you don't look carefully, you won't notice it at all. So-called ghost eyes, is this what they are? So Yu was shocked. The key point is, in his impression, there is no beast with such characteristics. The unknown is what is most frightening. It's too late to say anything now. Because at the same time when So Yu and the others discovered the ghost eye also noticed them. The gaze that was cast over seemed to be filled with a bit of curiosity mixed with a bit of ant-like contempt. What made So Yu even more terrified was that he had no idea when the ghost eye appeared. How powerful could an existence be that even he couldn't sense? At least start from the superiors. An unprecedented sense of crisis instantly overwhelmed So Yu. A fine layer of sweat suddenly appeared on his forehead, his heart was pounding with nervousness, and he even got goosebumps all over his skin. Clearly nothing was happening in front of me, and clearly there was no movement around me. But So Yu was very clear that something was coming. He swallowed hard. Where will the attack come from? What should I do? Run. Will the enemy be ambushing outside? So Yu's mind was in a mess. He just instinctively kept his whole body tense and ready for battle. At this moment, no matter how calmly he analyzed the situation, it would probably be of no avail. The other party was a monster far beyond his understanding. A ray of light hit So Yu. It was Yun Xian'er's innate skill, blessing. It seems that she also felt something. We have to do something. We can't just sit here and wait to die. So Yu was extremely anxious. The fear was gradually rising, and a sense of anxiety was surging in the air. And just at this moment, the attack arrived. It was like a hurricane, but more accurately, a shock wave. The shock wave was so powerful that it stirred up a lot of sand and dust. Everything in its path, whether it was cars or buildings, was crushed to pieces. This wave of offensive affected the entire shopping mall. So Yu couldn't help but curse in his heart, "FK. Are you kidding me? Is it necessary to make such a big fuss to deal with two low-level magicians like us?" The shock wave was extremely fast and arrived in the blink of an eye. At this time, only 2 or 3 seconds had passed since So Yu and the others saw the ghost eye. This is an ultra-long-range attack. Once it is discovered, it will be impossible to avoid it. But So Yu is not an ordinary person. His good habits allow him to react in time. The body, which had been in a tense state, suddenly shot out like a slingshot. Shave. He grabbed the terrified Yun Xian'er and used 2 shaving blows in a short period of time. Although it moved a long distance, the range of the shock wave was too wide. They were hit by the aftermath of the waves from the edge, and were blown away in the huge waves like 2 small sailboats. The shock wave smashed the entire shopping mall into pieces, almost razing it to the ground, and then moved forward several hundred meters before stopping. Wherever it passed, the ground sank and vehicles rolled over, forming a vacuum zone as long as a kilometer. If So Yu hadn't reacted, both of them would have been dead by now. Now they finally understood how the huge kilometer-long gully was formed. 10 minutes later, near the mall, downstairs of an apartment building. So Yu spat out a large mouthful of blood and leaned against the wall with a bleak face. His injuries were so severe that even his clothes were torn to pieces. It wasn't just the aftermath that caused the damage. There are also hard objects that are caught in the shock wave. Now, any ordinary person can end his life. Yun Xian'er is not much better. Her left hand and right leg were broken and her body was covered in blood. But even so, after she regained consciousness, she still supported herself with her arm and limped to So Yu's side. Cast a healing spell on So Yu. This was something the two of them had agreed on before. No matter what happens, once Suyu is injured, she must give treatment as soon as possible. Because Suyu is a combatant, if he falls, it will basically be the end of the game. On the other hand, Suyu also has the obligation to protect Yun Xian'er. They all know this very well. That's why we have come all the way here in tacit understanding. Suyu, are you okay? Yun Xian'er's voice was a little hoarse because she was enduring the pain. Suyu smiled bitterly and said, I'm not dead yet, but I don't have much fighting power. I need time to recover. At this moment, he was really grateful to the system for giving him the talent of Thousand Hands of the Forest, otherwise he would have died long ago. It seems that there is a reason why the protagonists in anime are so tough. Yun Xian'er asked in a trembling voice, have we encountered a special grade beast? I'm afraid so. Only the special grade ones can possess such exaggerated combat power. Long-range attacks from a distance of thousands of meters are really perverted. What now? Suyu replied helplessly, we can only pray that the monster thinks we are dead. Because of his injuries, his voice at this moment was filled with fatigue and weakness. Oh? Not dead. A sudden sound suddenly appeared and exploded in their ears. The sound seemed to come from the underworld, carrying with it a bone-chilling chill, and the temperature of the surrounding air seemed to drop several degrees. Suyu looked up suddenly, a look of horror that was hard to conceal on his face. I saw a dark figure floating quietly in the air. It has a human-shaped body, which is blue-black in color, with a naked upper body and circles of lines on its chest that look like tree rings. The scary thing is that this monster has 4 eyes on its face. In addition, behind it, there is a circle made up of hundreds of eyeballs, which makes people feel creepy just by looking at it. And it was the culprit of the shock wave just now. One of the upper-level Silver Clan, the Silent Sky Eye. Tian Tong exuded a suffocating aura. The evil breath was extremely strong, covering the sky and the sun, as if it was going to infect the entire world. Like a demon crawling out of hell. Suyu just took a look and felt as if he had fallen into a sea of corpses and blood. Save me, save me. He seemed to see countless people wailing in a sea of blood and countless broken limbs floating on the sea. My stomach churned. He now finally understood why there were no humans in this area. The monster in front of him was definitely of special grade, even more powerful than ordinary special grade. The sense of oppression that Ling Ye brought to him was 10 times greater than that during the martial arts exam. Although at that time, Ling Ye may not have released too much momentum. But this is also something that Suyu absolutely cannot defeat at the moment. In front of such monsters, humans are so insignificant. Suyu's hands were shaking and he couldn't control it because it was his body's instinctive reaction. Yun Xian'er, who was beside him, was so frightened that she had lost her soul. Her eyes were lifeless and she sat down on the ground with a look of despair on her face. He murmured, natural disaster level. This time, it's really a desperate situation. At this point, Suyu has become more open-minded. He has already gained by living one more lifetime and experiencing different lives. I just didn't expect the situation to deteriorate so quickly. At this time, Tian Tong was looking down at Suyu and Yun Xian'er from a high place, as if he was looking at 2 ants. I just hit them casually, but I didn't kill the 2 bugs. You delayed me from protecting His Majesty the White King, so you should die as apology. Without any nonsense, a destructive aura began to quickly condense at his fingertips. Faced with the approaching death, Suyu was not very scared, after all, he had experienced it once before. He even had time to make a gesture. That was the international friendly gesture used by most people in his previous life. Tian Tong naturally didn't know what this meant. Seeing the mocking smile on Suyu's lips and the movements of his hands, he felt annoyed for some reason. Remember, stupid bug, the one who killed you is the Supreme Silver General, the Sky Eye of Silence. Go to hell with your ridiculous hatred. Chapter 36. The devastating blow struck in an instant. No living creature can survive such an attack. The nearby area was annihilated in an instant and turned into dust. Tian Tong withdrew his hand contentedly. Everything is over, and it is time for him to reunite with His Royal Highness the White King. But just when he was about to leave, a feeling of disharmony arose in his heart. Such a powerful man he was, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The 2 pairs of eyes slowly closed, then suddenly opened, a ray of light flashed, and the scene in front of them was completely new. Strangely, everything below was not destroyed, but was intact as it was a few minutes ago. In other words, everything that just happened was an illusion. Illusion? When? Tian Tong suddenly remembered that when the human below made a strange gesture, a slight fluctuation appeared in his heart. It was this slight fluctuation that gave the insects an opportunity to take advantage. His expression did not change at all, and a murderous intent surged on his calm face. It's a futile struggle. How can such a trick fool me, Tian Tong? He glanced downward, where two new figures appeared. High-level magician, he murmured. These two figures were obviously much higher in rank than Su Yu and Yun Xianer. Tian Tong was a little confused. All the members of the patrol department nearby should have been killed by him. Where did these two people come from? On the ground. Yun Li looked up at Tian Tong in the air, his eyes filled with shock, and shouted anxiously, "Qin Ziyuan, my illusion has been broken. Why is the level of the president of the Ruins Magician Guild so low? Can't he hold on a little longer? It's so easy for you to say that. If you have the guts, come and try it. If I knew all this, would I still need you?" The two people were Qin Ziyuan and Yun Li who came to rescue. They were delayed on the way because of clearing the beasts in the ruins. Fortunately, they arrived in time. Tian Tong's overwhelming aura made Yun Li terrified. When did such a horrible monster appear in Sicheng? At that time, he had no idea whether he could control Tian Tong. You know, he is the president of the Sushu Master Guild in Sicheng. With his strength, it is no problem for him to control a group of high-level Sushu beasts at the same time. Even he lacks confidence, so you can imagine how terrifying Tian Tong is. But the situation was extremely urgent at the time. If he didn't take action, Xianer would definitely die. He could only try his best. Although it succeeded for some reason, the effect was indeed very short-lived. So, the previous scene happened. Qin Ziyuan and Yun Li, old enemies who hadn't seen each other for many years, quickly retreated while holding Su Yu and Yun Xianer in their arms, cursing at each other. Su Yu was carried on Qin Ziyuan's shoulders, with a look of astonishment on his face. "Brother Qin." At that time, he had already prepared himself to die, but who would have thought that he would be rescued by Qin Ziyuan the next second? After many days, when he saw Qin Ziyuan again, he felt like he was meeting a relative again. But he changed his mind and realized that it might not be a good time for Qin Ziyuan to save them. Although he knew that Qin Ziyuan was very strong, Su Yu was not blindly optimistic that he could defeat the monster above. "Su Yu, you really have provoked a terrible monster." Qin Ziyuan carried Su Yu on his right prosthetic leg and held a one-handed sword in his left hand, running wildly on the road. With just one glance at that monster, he concluded that there was no way he could defeat it. Escape or die, there are only two options. Su Yu showed a bitter smile. "You think I want to?" It was pure bad luck to land in this area and run into Tian Tong. At this moment, a sense of crisis suddenly hit me. A laser blasted down from the sky. Qin Ziyuan frowned, took a sudden step, and instantly distanced himself. Boom! There was a terrifying explosion behind, followed by an endless sea of fire. Tian Tong was floating more than 20 meters above the ground with a look of contempt on his face. He wanted to see where these insects could run to. On the ground, after dodging the attack, Su Yu and Yun Xianer each had something extra in their hands. "Drink it, it can heal your injuries," Yun Li said. "This is an advanced healing potion, which is several levels more effective than the primary potion Qin Ziyuan used on Su Yu before." Immediately, Qin Ziyuan said to Su Yu with a serious expression, "Time is running out, I will only say it once. If you and Yun Xianer want to evacuate safely, you can only take the underground passage in the mall. Although it may be a little dangerous, it is much safer than being exposed on the surface." According to Nancy's observation, a considerable number of high-level beasts have gathered at the patrol guard headquarters. Therefore, even if there are beasts in the underground passage, they can only be low-level beasts. Remember, don't walk on the ground. Got it? Su Yu nodded with a complicated expression. He probably guessed what would happen next. Qin Ziyuan had written everything in his eyes. Sometimes, there is no need for words between two men, just a look can convey all the emotions. Su Yu couldn't help but feel a dull pain in his heart. Qin Ziyuan didn't say a word about what he would do, his eyes were filled with concern for Su Yu's safety. In fact, when he appeared here, he had already put life and death aside. Su Yu knew all this, but could do nothing about it. After all, is it because his strength is too weak, even though his improvement is already far beyond that of ordinary people? Su Yu, take Xian'er and leave here. Yun Li, who had been prejudiced against Su Yu before, now had a very gentle look in his eyes. He also knew that Su Yu had been protecting Yun Xian'er since the martial arts exam incident. Otherwise, with her little ability, how could she survive in this hellish environment? He was very grateful to Su Yu, but time did not allow him to say more. After drinking the potion, Su Yu and Yun Xian'er recovered almost all their conditions. After hearing Yun Li's words, Yun Xian'er felt her heart being pulled up, and her voice was choked with sobs. Father. Yun Li didn't even turn his head, waved his hand, and said irritably, go. Su Yu gritted his teeth, picked her up and ran. A wise judgment, kid. Qin Ziyuan looked approving. As expected of his student, this is how you act when you need to be decisive. Every second of delay means less hope of survival, because he doesn't know how long he can delay with Yun Li want to run. Tian Tong in the air was slightly angry. These whimsical humans wanted to run away from him? He would never allow it. The arm is raised again. But this time the attack was interrupted and his eyes suddenly blurred. The same thing again? Court death. Tian Tong was completely furious. Even though such mental interference was nothing to him, it was a naked provocation. But at this moment, an extremely sharp aura suddenly came from behind him. Where are you looking at? It was Qin Ziyuan. In just a blink of an eye, he seized the opportunity and flashed behind Tian Tong. The cooperation between the senior magicians is flawless. Qin Ziyuan had a murderous look on his face, and the long sword at his waist had already been unsheathed. He used all his strength in this sword, vowing to cut off Tian Tong's head. Bang! There was a loud bang that went straight into the sky, forming a shock wave that spread around. It was a big deal, but sadly, it didn't work. Qin Ziyuan's sword was easily caught between Tian Tong's two fingers and could not move forward an inch. Even though he had been mentally prepared, he was still shocked at this moment. Is the gap in strength so big? What the hell is this? There was endless mockery in Tian Tong's eyes. The next moment, a huge force attacked Qin Ziyuan's chest. His eyes widened and his whole body fell like a stream of light. A huge deep pit appeared on the ground. The battlefield was filled with smoke, and the two people's seamless cooperation was easily broken. Yun Li brushed off the dust in front of him and shouted, "Old man, are you dead?" "Ahem, still alive." Qin Ziyuan slowly walked out of the deep pit. The clothes on his upper body had disappeared, revealing his strong muscles. It was densely covered with various scars. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and moved his body, making a crackling sound of bones colliding. Tian Tong's kick almost knocked him into the ground. Fortunately, he is strong enough. This kick also made him regain the feeling he had when he was fighting, and his body, which had been rusty for 5 years, was restarted. You know, he was called the immortal Xiu Wen back then. There's a tough battle ahead, Xiu Wen. Certainly. Yun Li changed the title. Many years ago, when the two were teammates, they were so affectionate. But because of the death of his sister Yongxiu, a gap gradually developed between him and Qin Ziyuan. They thought they would never have any intersection again in this life, but now, because of 2 younger generations, they are forced to be closely connected again. The changes of everything in the world are really unpredictable. Of the 3 heroes of Sicheng in the past, when we look back, they are now the only ones left. Qin Ziyuan and Yun Li looked at each other and both felt relieved. Someone asked Qin Ziyuan, is it worth it? Taking such a big risk to save a low-level magician. There are a lot of young people like this in the empire. Qin Ziyuan smiled but said nothing. There's nothing worth it, he just wants to do it. He firmly believed that Su Yu had great potential and talent, and was definitely not inferior to those so-called geniuses. Their generation is gradually getting older, and young people are the real flying stars of the new era. They are like shining stars, full of infinite possibilities and hope. One day in the future, they will surely break this cage woven of despair. Qin Ziyuan firmly believed this. Standing in this devastated city, he seemed to have returned to 5 years ago. The only difference was that this time he didn't retreat. He saved Su Yu. Qin Ziyuan took a deep breath, feeling the power gradually rising from deep within his heart. At this moment, he seemed to have found himself 5 years ago. The one that everyone praised endlessly, the immortal Xiu Wen. At this moment, all the decadence and regrets were swept away, replaced by boundless passion. He grinned, showing 2 rows of teeth, and said excitedly, Yun Li, let's do something big. yet. Yun Li responded softly with a hint of smile in his eyes. Chapter 37. Su Yu left the battlefield and rushed to the underground entrance with Yun Xian'er. With every wave of movement behind him, he felt more uneasy. Brother Qin. He muttered silently in his heart, his nose feeling a little sore. But the current situation does not allow him to be sad. He could only suppress all his complicated thoughts and keep running forward. Live, he must live. Otherwise, wouldn't Brother Qin and President Yunli's desperate rescue, as well as all the efforts and struggles they have made all along, be meaningless? Su Yu bit her lip and forced herself to calm down through the pain. The mall had long been razed to the ground. He easily found the entrance to the underground passage. After arriving at the underground floor, there is a long corridor and a half-meter-high staircase below, which makes Su Yu think of the subway station in his previous life. There was no light in the dark passage, which looked eerie and scary. There was also a faint smell of blood. Yun Xian'er, Yun Xian'er. Su Yu called Yun Xian'er's name and found that she looked a little pale. Are you okay? No. It's okay. Yun Xian'er shuddered all over before coming back to her senses from her trance. Su Yu stared at her quietly, a hint of doubt flashed in his eyes, but in the end he didn't ask any more questions. Maybe I was too sad. After all, surviving through the sacrifice of others is an experience that would bring a huge psychological burden to many people, and even someone as strong as Su Yu himself would not be immune to it. However, he chose to bury this burden deep in his heart and not let it affect his judgment and actions. At this time, Su Yu did not notice Yun Xian'er's condition, and something was wrong. He sighed and said, "Let's go." Yun Xian'er followed silently, hiding the panic and anxiety in her eyes. The figures of the two gradually disappeared into the dark passage. In a machinery factory in the south of Sicheng. Due to the invasion of the ruins beasts, most of the workers here have fled, making the place seem a bit deserted. Suddenly, there was a faint fluctuation in the space, and a figure flashed out. As soon as he landed, he looked around with some confusion. It was Jing Yang who was affected by the teleportation barrier along with Su Yu and others a day ago. The unfamiliar environment made him frown. Factory? Why am I here suddenly? That white light. Jing Yang looked around but did not see Su Yu and Yun Xian'er. This place is probably quite far away from the secret forest. He had a bad feeling. Anyway, contact your family first. At the moment of taking out the communicator, he fixed his eyes, looked upwards, and shouted, "Who's there?" "Pa, pa, pa." There was a burst of applause, and a man appeared on the beam in mid-air. He looked down at Jing Yang from a high position. Hey, isn't this Jing Yang, the #1 genius that we are proud of in Sicheng? Why aren't you saving the world? What are you doing in the factory? Are you here to screw in some screws too?" The man said with a smile on his face, teasingly. Jin Jiang's eyes were fixed on the figure, and a hint of vigilance arose in his heart. Worker. He saw that the man was wearing work clothes. Could he be an employee of this factory? But, something always feels wrong. The man in work clothes seemed not to notice Jin Jiang's expression and started introducing himself. His name is Chen Haisheng, and he is indeed a worker in this factory. But, that's in the past. After he finished speaking, he opened his hands and his expression began to become crazy. Now, I am a member of the New Moon, a new human being who is far superior to you ruins masters. New Moon. Jing Yang didn't know what happened in Sicheng, but he had heard of the Crescent organization. In other words, you are the enemy. He said in a cold voice, with flames bursting out of the palm of his hand. Enemy? Hee, ha 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 ha. Chen Haisheng laughed wildly with his head back, as if he had heard some huge joke. What's so funny? Although Jing Yang was puzzled, he could see that the man in front of him was very emotionally unstable. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he had just escaped from a mental hospital. Of course I'm laughing because I'm happy. Finally I can kill you bastards. Every single magician deserves to die. Chen Haisheng completely lost his mind, the blood vessels on his forehead bulged, and he looked at Jing Yang with hatred in his eyes, and his eyeballs seemed about to burst out. The overwhelming hatred swept across the entire space, and even Jin Jiang's face changed. But who would have thought that Chen Haisheng, who possessed such a terrifying aura, was just an ordinary person 5 years ago? At that time, Chen Haisheng followed a relative and came to this factory to work. He is nearly 40 years old, has an ordinary appearance and no outstanding talents, but only a pair of hard-working hands. His wife and daughter all live in Jiachen. There are almost no weekends off in the factory, and the only time you can take leave to go home is during holidays. But Chen Haisheng rarely does this. He worked hard, saved money, and lived frugally, just to hire a good teacher for his daughter, who had ordinary talents, so that she could go to the magician school in the future. His dream, that's all. But the Battle of Jiachen that year destroyed everything. The news said that Jiachen fell and countless people died in the disaster. That day, Chen Haisheng had just received his salary. Looking at the balance in his card, he was filled with happiness. When the news came, he was completely stunned and couldn't believe it was true. The world, like a mirror, shattered. He returned to the dormitory in despair, but unexpectedly received a message. That was the message from my wife, a message for help. He was suddenly extremely excited, with tears streaming down his face. They are still alive, still alive. So he couldn't wait to go to the patrol department for help. Please, my wife and daughter are still alive, they are still in Jiachen. Please register your name. After he finished registering, the staff member said, there are too many people to be rescued at the moment. Go back and wait for notification. Chen Haisheng wondered if the woman in front of him was a little too cold. That's 2 lives. He suddenly became furious and yelled at the staff member, wait. How long do you have to wait? Are you going to save the people or not? After being yelled at by him, the woman also became annoyed. What are you yelling about? It's not your family that's waiting for rescue. Besides, many of our people have also sacrificed their lives. They will never come back, did you know that? Many officials from the patrol department lowered their heads in disappointment when they heard this. Seeing the situation getting out of control, someone immediately came over to persuade them, okay, everyone has had a hard time these past few days, calm down and forgive each other. The woman was pulled away by her colleagues, still angrily saying, really? How dare you yell at me? He's just a civilian. This statement may have been made in a fit of anger, or it may have been made intentionally. But no matter what, the words she blurted out were like a sharp knife, stabbing Chen Haisheng's heart. He was suddenly struck by lightning and stood there with his head down. Until the end, he didn't get an accurate answer and went back disappointed. In the following time, he would come to the patrol department to ask the same question every day. The result is, no result. He began to drink all day and rarely went to the factory. He lost his family, his job, and all meaning of existence in this world. This world is rotten. What they said about protecting us is all a lie, all a lie. Civilian, ha ha, just because I'm a civilian. Chen Haisheng smiled bitterly, and fell on the side of the road, already drunk. People passing by were in a hurry and no one paid any attention to this dirty and smelly homeless man. I don't know how much time passed. How are you? Chen Haisheng seemed to hear someone calling him. He opened his eyes blearily, and through the hazy mist, he saw a man with golden hair. Need help? The blonde man has a gentle and elegant temperament, and his eyes are like a crescent moon. In Chen Haisheng's impression, only big shots have such temperament. The blonde man stretched out his white-gloved hand and said with a compassionate look, poor man, please allow me to help you. He seems to have a unique charm that makes people unconsciously like him. Faced with the kindness shown by the blonde man, Chen Haisheng unconsciously stretched out his hand and shook hands with him. Don't worry, we have a mutual aid group, and there are many people like you in it. There, you will be reborn. What should I call you? The blonde man smiled and said, you can call me Clear Month. Chapter 38. Chen Haisheng has been in the Mutual Aid Association for a long time. During this period of time, he met people of all kinds and ages, but without exception, they all had tragic life experiences. There are many orphans whose parents have passed away and people whose homes have been destroyed by wild beasts. King Yu brought them together to form such a mutual aid association. I want to help them get over their inner pain. The Mutual Aid Association not only provides free food and accommodation, but also provides psychological recovery therapy specifically for them. Chen Haisheng and his colleagues only need to provide the so-called physical data. It's nothing more than doing some tests and drawing blood. But Chen Haisheng is not a fool, so how could he not see that there was something strange? But what does it matter? The departure of his family has long made him unable to distinguish the meaning of reality, and the only thing he wants to do is to escape. It is even more impossible to report to the patrol department. He hated the superior magician in the place from the bottom of his heart. King Yu used them so blatantly, but what was very strange was that deep down in Chen Haishan's heart he didn't have the slightest resistance. Perhaps it was because the concern in King Yu's eyes was too sincere, or maybe it was something else. In short, it doesn't matter anymore. King Yu once said to him, "All my efforts are to make your life better. Do you believe me?" "I believe you, Mr. King Yu." "That's really great." King Yu narrowed her eyes and smiled very purely. After that, a few more years passed. Chen Haisheng stayed in the Mutual Aid Association all the time, but later he took a name. New Moon. It symbolizes that mankind has broken through the shackles of the past and become a rising crescent moon. One day, King Yu brought a tube of reagent. The liquid in the bottle is crystal clear and has a faint luster. King Yu was in a very depressed state, but her eyes revealed great excitement. He named this potion Silver Blood. After so many years, he finally made it. This is the good medicine that can save all mankind. King Yu was very excited. With silver blood, even ordinary people can have the power to protect themselves. There are only two side effects. The first thing is the compatibility. If it is not specifically formulated, ordinary people who take it rashly may explode and die. However, it is precisely because of this that King Yu continues to test the bodies of Chen Haisheng and others. The second is that after using the silver blood, one will become extremely hostile to humans and want to kill them immediately. King Yu didn't understand why this happened. There seemed to be some factor in the liquid that was beyond his understanding. He is unable to solve this problem now. But after thinking about it, King Yu felt that this was not an easy problem to solve. Wouldn't it be enough if all human beings just took the silver blood? Ruin magicians are indeed a manifestation of human evolution, but in his opinion, this evolution is not complete. Ordinary humans are a good example. Moreover, he has not yet fully studied the silver blood. King Yu believes that with the silver blood as an opportunity, mankind will usher in a new era. All people will complete their evolution, completely break away from the category of carbon-based organisms, and move towards a higher level of life. When King Yu thought of that grand occasion, she felt an irrepressible excitement in her heart, as if every cell in her body was cheering and trembling. After several years of getting along, people like Chen Haisheng have long trusted King Yu very much. They all injected the silver blood without hesitation. King Yu watched this scene with satisfaction. She felt as if the seedlings she had worked so hard to cultivate had finally grown strong and healthy. Her eyes couldn't help but become moist. A new era is coming. Time goes back to the present. After taking the silver blood, Chen Haisheng gained power that ordinary people could not achieve. But because of this, he also became extremely hostile to humans. Especially his previous experiences, which made him full of hatred towards the masters of the art of chaos. And Jing Yang, who was standing below him, felt confused. He had indeed offended some people because of his arrogant attitude, but this was the first time he had seen such great hatred. I just wanted to skin him alive. Jing Yang has not dared to make any move because he felt that he seemed to be targeted. There seemed to be countless sharp weapons in this factory that wanted to tear him to pieces. Go to hell. All the ruins magicians must die. Chen Haisheng finally couldn't bear it anymore and launched an attack. The beam under his feet made a mechanical clicking sound, and the huge hook of the crane danced wildly towards Yang Yang with an astonishing momentum. The hook weighing several tons seemed to have no weight at this moment, swinging wildly in the air. At the same time, all the mechanical components in the factory seemed to have come to life. Ding, ding ding ding. The sound of mechanical collisions resounded throughout the factory, and those steel monsters actually moved on the spot, as if they were dancing. The large number of them made Yang Yang's scalp tingle and a chill ran down his spine. No matter how strong he is only at the level of an intermediate level magician. Escape. He shook his head internally. This will only reveal flaws. Chen Haisheng was able to easily operate the hook that was so heavy just now, let alone those small objects. This is Chen Haishan's home ground. If we don't get rid of him, we won't be able to escape. Jing Yang is not the kind of person who sits and waits for death. He is going to be a special man in the future. How can he die here? A glimmer of fire ignited deep in Yan Jiang's eyes. Sicheng Railway Station. This place has become the temporary base camp of the only remaining patrol guard in Sicheng. Together with the evacuated civilians, this small area was packed with people. A number of temporary tents were erected in the square in front of the station, and a temporary refugee camp was set up. Many people evacuated in such a hurry that they didn't take anything with them. My family also lost contact with me in the disaster. The patrol department is having a headache now. Not only do they have to guard this area, but they are also responsible for evacuating civilians. But the number of passengers each train can carry is limited. The only good news is that no high-level beasts come to attack for the time being, giving everyone a chance to catch their breath. The original railway station office area has now become a temporary command post. The remaining senior executives of Sicheng gathered here to prepare for a meeting. Make a summary of the current disaster based on all the information reported. In fact, many people still know nothing about this attack. The sudden appearance of the Sioux beast instantly overwhelmed Sicheng's defense system. The leader of the patrol division was killed in the battle, several Susha brigades were wiped out, and even the big shots of the Platinum Council are now missing. This is the worst possible scenario. Humanity has not suffered such a heavy loss in a very long time. Many people seem to have forgotten the fear that the ruin beast once brought to them. This catastrophe was like a loud slap in the face, hitting everyone hard and waking them up from their sweet dreams. Outside the conference room, Sun Qizi looked at a woman in military uniform with some distress and said, "Xiao Qian, I'm counting on you." Nancy looked pale and haggard, and replied softly, "Leave it to me, Director Sunday. This is my responsibility." Because of Director Ji's sacrifice, Sun Qizi is currently acting as the director of the Sicheng Patrol Department. Sun Qizi read the summary report submitted by Nancy and felt that it was of great reference value, so he asked her to host the meeting. Chapter 39. To Nancy, Director Ji is not only her superior, but also an elder she respects. Ever since she joined the patrol department, Director Ji has placed high hopes on her. The cultivation over the years goes without saying. Before leaving, he confidently handed over the defense of the martial arts exam to her. Unfortunately, she was still a step too late. One can imagine how devastatingly saddened Nancy was when such a person passed away. She hadn't slept for more than 30 hours, and her eyes were bloodshot. I don't know what happened to the teacher and Su Yu. Oh. Su Yu and Qin Ziyuan had lost communication for a long time, and she couldn't help but worry. "Xiao Qian, what's wrong with you?" Sun Qizi asked when he saw Nancy standing there. Nancy came back to her senses and said reluctantly, "It's okay. I'm glad you're okay. Everyone is waiting for us. Let's go in." "Okay." After Sun Qizi went in, Nancy was about to reach out to push the door when she suddenly felt dizzy. Just when her head was about to hit the door, she bit her tongue hard and forced herself to come back to life. She clapped her hands to her cheeks. "Come on, Nancy. Compared with the people of Sicheng, what is this little fatigue?" Then he took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The conference room was packed. Looking around, most of the remaining prominent people in Sicheng were here. The Guild of Ruins Magicians, the commander of the temple, representatives of the people, etc. Almost all the captains of the patrol department were injured. After Nancy took a quick look around, she discovered that the quasi-special level Holy Temple official who was based in Sicheng was not present. It is said that he was seriously injured in the battle with the Reaper and is still recovering. As for the person who attended in his place, it was a fat man covered in grease. Yufa, deputy commander of the temple stationed in Sicheng. But the emblem on his shoulder only had 3 stars, indicating that he was only a senior magician. According to the regulations, the strength of the deputy commander must be borne by a senior magician. One can imagine the tricks involved. After Sun Qizi made a brief opening speech, he announced the start of the meeting. Just as Nancy was about to speak, a sinister voice rang out, "I say, is there no one in the patrol guard department? Such an important meeting is being chaired by a mid-level magician." The person who spoke was Yufa. As soon as these words were spoken, many people from the patrol department glared at them angrily. Yufa said disdainfully, "What are you looking at? Isn't it because of your incompetence that Sicheng was lost?" These words were extremely harsh and were equivalent to a slap in the face of many people present. Even Sun Qizi's face turned black. The temple was indeed powerful and held back the Reapers, otherwise their casualties would have been even greater. "But, what does this have to do with you, Yufa? When you heard that the ruin beast was wreaking havoc in the city, weren't you, the deputy commander of the temple, the first person to run away?" But due to the power behind Yufa, most people were just filled with righteous indignation and did not dare to speak out. Sun Qizi coughed and said, "Commander Yu, it doesn't matter who is in charge. What's important is that we should sort out the current situation and unite all the forces that can be united. Unity. Then tell me, where is President Yunli of the Ruin Magician Guild? Yufa was still relentless. Well. At this time, someone walked up behind Yufa and whispered something. After hearing this, Yufa slammed the table and said, "Okay, so this is what you call unity? At a time when the building is about to collapse, as one of the strongest people in Sicheng, instead of staying here to protect the people, you actually went to rescue the people in the occupied area privately. Where is the discipline in this? What's more, the person we're saving is a loser who can't even control his own abilities." Yufa sneered, looked around, and said, "I also heard that there is a high-level magician with Yunli." "Commander Yu." Nancy interrupted him harshly. She pointed to the door, stared at Yufa, and said, "If you are really worried about your life, I can arrange for your evacuation immediately. This is a command center, not a market selling pots." Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Yufa was being sarcastic here, and just wanted to put all the blame for the fall of Sicheng on the patrol guard division. When Nancy said this with finality, her eyes were firm and sharp, like a sharp sword, piercing Yufa's heart. Not only did he not take Yufa's face into consideration at all, he was also mocking him for being afraid of death. Everyone couldn't help but secretly say good, finally getting rid of their anger. Yufa was so angry that he was shaking all over. He pointed at Nancy and was speechless. He obviously didn't expect that a small lieutenant would dare to contradict him. But he didn't dare to evacuate. The genuine commander didn't retreat, so if he dared to retreat, his fate would definitely not be good. Yufa's face turned red and blue, and he didn't dare to continue to offend the public. He snorted, "Don't even think about letting me stay with those civilians." After saying this, he turned his head away and said no more. After this incident, many people no longer dared to look down on Nancy. The meeting resumed. Nancy first summarized the cause and process of the incident. It was basically a report based on her original inferences combined with subsequent information. But after hearing the conclusion, someone below couldn't help but ask, "Lieutenant Nancy, according to what you said, the enemy has caused such a mess in Sicheng, and their target is Ling Yi special grade." "That's right." "Wow." There was an uproar in the audience. Even the Silver Clan and Ruin God mentioned in the report were temporarily ignored by them. Many people were shocked, as this was something they had never expected. But after thinking about it carefully, it all becomes clear. We are not stupid. When there is no information gap, everything becomes clear. Besides, the enemy's purpose had been very clear since Xinyu made that statement. But they still have a question. Even if the target is Ling Yi, they have to be able to defeat him. Currently on this planet, there are probably not many people who can definitely defeat Ling Yi. Ridiculous! Yufa shouted angrily. "Do you know Ling Yi's special level strength? Are you just talking nonsense here?" Nancy was blunt and retorted, "Nonsense? Do you know that Ling Yi has been out of contact for more than 10 hours? He comes and goes as he pleases. Maybe he has already reached the enemy's lair. Do you believe what you said?" Nancy sneered. Yufa was so angry that he was breathing heavily, and the fat on his chest was shaking. All right, stop arguing about these meaningless things." Sun Qizi waved his hand and said, "What we need to do now is to ensure the defense line while waiting for rescue and looking for opportunities to search for the whereabouts of Ling Yi special grade. Lieutenant Nancy, please tell me what you think." Nancy nodded and turned on the screen projection. After the incident in the martial arts exam, she realized that there must be someone within the enemy who is proficient in barrier techniques. How else to explain the barrier during the martial arts exam, and the reason why Su Yu and the others disappeared? If we think of everything in the worst possible way, would Ling Yi be willing to be trapped in the barrier now? The answer is yes. Because if you want to kill Ling Yi for sure, you can only use this stupid method. But, creating a barrier to trap Ling Yi? It must be difficult no matter how you think about it. If this is true, then the person behind this. Nancy didn't dare to think any further and felt a chill rising from the bottom of her heart. Later, she calculated a location through the process of elimination combined with the abnormal activities of those high-level beasts. "Right here," Nancy said, pointing at the screen. "Ling Yi is a special class, and is probably trapped here." Chapter 40. After Nancy said this, everyone understood the whole story. Although it is just speculation, the logic is clear and reasonable, and most people are willing to believe it. No one dared to underestimate such a young lieutenant. Except for Yufa. He just didn't like Nancy. A mere mid-level magician made him look foolish time and again, so he retorted, "Humph. Why are you so sure that Master Ling Ye is there? If something happens, can you take the responsibility?" "Lieutenant Nancy," Yufa said slowly, staring at Nancy like a poisonous snake. But this time, not only did Nancy ignore him, but everyone chose to ignore him. Yufa was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Nancy pointed to the screen and said, "Everyone, please look here." That was the floor plan of Sicheng, and near the patrol guard headquarters, it was covered with densely packed red dots, almost filling up the entire area. That is the number of ruin beasts detected before. I'm sure everyone is now clear that we have a new enemy, the Silver Clan. We still don't know how they were born, but one thing is certain, they not only have the same intelligence as us, but also have a clear system architecture. Through this martial arts exam incident, it is not difficult to see that the Silver Clan has a strict organizational plan. Of course, the most terrifying thing is that the Silver Clan may have the ability to control the ruin beast. As soon as these words came out, it was like a bolt from the blue, exploding in the conference room. Everyone's face changed drastically, and they were shocked beyond words. Everyone present knew exactly what it meant to control the ruin beast. Could it be that humanity will once again face the despair brought about by the advent of the ruins hundreds of years ago? Nancy's bad news came one after another, leaving no room for anyone to breathe. She had to make this clear, otherwise there would always be some people who would take chances and underestimate the enemy. According to my speculation, there must be a supreme decision-maker in the Silver Clan. Let's call him king for now. The reason why the ruins beasts gathered together is most likely to protect their king. Otherwise, it would be hard for Nancy to believe that those usually ferocious and cruel beasts would stay in one place so obediently. After listening to this, everyone had to admit Nancy's professionalism as a Sushao strategic analyst. I see. It's like an ant colony protecting its queen, right, Lieutenant? Yeah, about the same. This is really... Everyone felt it was absurd and surprised at the same time. But even if we know, it seems we can't do anything. Look at the injured colleagues around them. What else can they do with their current strength? Morale was extremely low, with despair and frustration on everyone's face. Although there is still the power of the temple, everyone subconsciously ignores it when they think of Yufa's attitude. How can this be meaningless? Everyone. Sun Qizi slowly stood up and said in a strong voice, "This information is definitely useful. Once the rescue arrives, we can quickly attack, right?" He looked around, his eyes sweeping across everyone's face, as if he wanted to convey his beliefs to everyone present. There are still tens of thousands of people in Sicheng waiting for us to save them. How can we give up so easily at this moment? So, please conserve your energy and wait for the battle tomorrow. Sun Qizi's encouragement played a very good role. At least everyone's mood was no longer so pessimistic. Director Sun is right. We haven't lost yet, and we haven't lost Sicheng yet. Regain your energy and fight again another day. Everyone's fighting spirit was rekindled, and the meeting room was extremely lively for a while. After giving them a disdainful look, Yufa led his men away. Tisk, a bunch of ignorant and reckless people. He asked the men beside him, "Is the special level's injury better now?" "It's probably not healed yet. If it doesn't work, let's go to another place for treatment." "What treatment conditions are there in this rural area?" Yufa couldn't stay in Sicheng for even a moment. After the meeting, Nancy dragged her tired body back to the office. As soon as she sat down on the seat, she felt as if all her strength was drained away. She fell directly on the table and her eyes closed involuntarily. In just a few seconds, Nancy fell into a deep sleep. After an unknown amount of time, she felt someone tapping her shoulder. "Lieutenant, Lieutenant." "What thing?" Nancy opened her eyes dazedly. It is said that there were traces of Sioux beasts on the evacuation route. Director Sun wants you to go over there. "Oh, I'll be there in a minute." Etc. Nancy suddenly thought of something important and hurriedly shouted, "Do you have any news about our teacher? Instructor Qin?" There was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't receive it." As if a basin of cold water was poured over her head, Nancy showed obvious disappointment on her face and whispered, "Is that so?" In order to cheer herself up, Nancy went to wash her face. Looking at her extremely haggard self in the mirror, she sighed. "I thought to myself, I wonder if the teacher managed to save Suyu and the others. I hope nothing happens to them. She really didn't want to see the people she cared about leave again. The dark corridor was extremely humid. Occasionally a drop of liquid fell from the top of the alley, making a slight sound. It has been some time since Suyu and Yunxianer entered the underground passage. During this period, they proceeded cautiously. A faint light emanated from Yunxianer's fingertips, illuminating the road ahead. Along the way, Suyu saw human corpses more than once. He guessed that someone must have known about this underground passage and wanted to escape through it. But I didn't expect that there were also beasts in here. There was a faint smell of blood in the air, mixed with a damp scent, which was a bit unpleasant. Not long after they walked, Suyu suddenly grabbed Yunxianer, and the two of them pressed tightly against the wall. What's wrong? Yunxianer asked in a low voice. There are several auras of ruin beasts ahead, but their levels are not high. Suyu turned his head and noticed that Yunxianer was different. Her face was pale, her forehead was covered with sweat, and with a ray of light, she looked like a female ghost. What's wrong with you? I'm fine. You call this okay? I'm just a little afraid of the dark. Is this really the case? Suyu was very skeptical. He had to say seriously, we are now on the same boat. If we don't trust each other, how can we get out of here? A conflicted expression appeared on Yunxianer's face. Finally, he said hesitantly, let's deal with those ruins beasts first. Can I help you? Suyu shook his head, no, your ability is very important, you have to use it sparingly. After hearing what he said, Yunxianer didn't know why, but she felt relieved. The most urgent task is to deal with those beasts. Suyu glanced at Yunxianer and walked up. The intermittent sounds of fighting reached Yunxianer's ears. She squatted down weakly against the cold wall. She stretched out her hands tremblingly and stared at her palms, her eyes full of confusion and helplessness. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she wished so much that everything that happened before her eyes was just a nightmare. How I wish time could go back to 2 days ago, to that bustling Sicheng. It was not until this moment that she realized that perhaps she was not as strong as she thought. Compared with Suyu's calmness and courage, her psychological quality is simply terrible. Why is this happening? Father, mother, what should I do? Woo. In the silent and deserted corner, she sobbed softly, like a wounded little animal licking its wounds alone. Chapter 41. The battle didn't last too long. Suyu was as strong as ever and took care of the beast in no time. Yunxianer smiled self-deprecatingly, genius. She doesn't deserve these 2 words at all. Maybe Jing Yang was right, she was just a half-baked person, but she just refused to admit it. That's why I use some tricks to prove myself. In the eyes of others, I must be ridiculous, haha. The dim environment, the unknown future, the uncertainty of her father's life or death, coupled with the trauma in her heart, all these difficulties caused Yunxianer's mentality to quickly become unbalanced and she was on the verge of collapse. She didn't even notice Suyu coming back to her after the fight. Have you cried? Yunxianer's expression froze, and hesitant to speak. She looked completely different from what she was a few days ago. Even if I live in this kind of world, I'm still just a little girl who has just reached adulthood, Suyu thought secretly. He sighed and sat down. Being in a life and death situation, he doesn't have the patience to be a psychological counselor. He asked Yunxianer directly, what's wrong with you? If you are not feeling well, let's take a break. If there is something on your mind, please speak out. It's already such an environment, what can't be said? If you keep going down like this, do you know that it will kill us? The last sentence, once spoken, was already a reprimand. Yunxianer's face turned even paler. She felt a little uncomfortable with Suyu's sharp gaze and lowered her head. After a long time, she said hesitantly, actually, it's my Sushu. What's wrong? The energy of the ruin crystal is almost exhausted. Then what? There's no way to replenish it, which means I'm going to become a useless person soon. After a day of exhaustion, plus treating Suyu's injuries, Schwetter's energy to maintain the operation of the Sushu circuit has run out. At most, you can bless once more. Without Schwetter's assistance, she would not be able to control her abilities at all. This will lead to a very serious consequence. For example, the blessing bestowed upon Suyu could very likely turn into a poison that drags down his body. On the contrary, if it is released on the enemy, it is very likely to strengthen the opponent. Whether it is a gain or a loss effect, it is full of uncertainty. In battle, this is the most taboo situation. The consequences of relying on external forces over the years finally backfired at this moment. Having lost her abilities, she also lost the confidence and support she relied on to survive, and became like an ordinary person, feeling anxious and uneasy. Yun Xian'er didn't even dare to look directly into So Yu's eyes, for she was afraid that So Yu would give her a look of disdain and disgust. Just like in childhood. Whenever Yun Xian'er thought about the possibility that So Yu would look at her in that way, her heart felt as if it was being stabbed by a knife. Is that all? So Yu frowned slightly, but there was no sign of disgust on his face. What do I think it is? He didn't care at all. He stood up and said, since you are fine, get up quickly. We still have a long way to go. Yun Xian'er opened her mouth slightly, completely confused, as if she was frozen in place. She never expected So Yu to react like this. I was at a loss for a moment. Wait, So Yu, do you really understand what I mean? I've lost my abilities. I'm a complete burden. I know. You know what? So what if I lose my ability? Do I have to give up? It's not that I give up, but I'm useless now, you can just abandon me. So Yu frowned. How could he hear some self-destructive tendencies in Yun Xian'er's tone? So he said, what are you thinking? I won't abandon you. Why? What on earth are you thinking about? Can I get out alive if I leave you behind? So Yu felt that Yun Xian'er had completely lost her ability to think and her logic was in chaos. When humans are in trouble, it is indeed easy for them to have wild thoughts. He pulled her in front of him, stared into her evasive eyes, and said word by word, listen carefully, Yun Xian'er, I will not give up on you, understand? It would be the best if we could get out. But if we encounter an invincible enemy, we can only fight to the death. It's such a simple thing, can't you figure it out? So Yu is not a heartless person. Under such circumstances, he will definitely not abandon Yun Xian'er. Not to mention that Yun Xian'er's ability helped them get here, Yun Li's healing potion alone had saved his life. So Yu's voice was not loud, but the determination in his tone struck deep into Yun Xian'er's soul. My confused heart suddenly calmed down. What am I doing? My father risked his own life to save me, and I was thinking of giving up. Haven't you already made up your mind not to hold him back? What's this all about now? Yun Xian'er, Yun Xian'er, you are really getting worse and worse. She suddenly woke up and realized how shameful her behavior was. At this moment, I really want to slap myself. In other words, So Yu has the patience and willingness to enlighten her. If it were someone else, they would have left her alone long ago. Yun Xian'er realized this and felt ashamed. She quickly apologized to So Yu, I'm really sorry. It was me who had a seizure this time. Okay, I don't blame you, let's get on the road. Also, let me ask one more question, can the blessing really only be used once? So Yu couldn't help but ask. Yun Xian'er smiled bitterly, well, only once. Is that so? So Yu touched his chin and then told her his plan. Are you sure? Yun Xian'er asked in surprise. Listen to me. It will be useful at the critical moment. Well, I'll listen to you. Seeing that Yun Xian'er's emotions had finally stabilized, So Yu breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know about Yongxuan's childhood psychological trauma, but he could understand her behavior. After all, not everyone can remain calm when facing difficulties. In fact, after the battle with Tian Tong, So Yu's state of mind also underwent a drastic change. After seeing that kind of monster and surviving it, what else could possibly scare him? He himself might not even be aware of this. Bang! A ruined beast fell heavily against the wall and was motionless when it landed on the ground. So Yu spawned another wave of monsters, this time it was an old beast, the Blade Wolf. Seeing the sharp blade on Blade Wolf, So Yu's heart moved and he took a step forward. He pulled the sharp blade from the Blade Wolf, pressed a notch, and wrapped the picked-up cloth strip around the end. Yun Xian'er looked confused, So Yu, what are you doing? I'll make a weapon for you. You should know some taijutsu. Of course, it's a required course, but it's not as perverted as yours. So Yu automatically ignored the following sentence. This is the third wave of ruin beasts they have encountered, and there will definitely be more and more in the future. Attracted by the smell of blood, they will only become more violent. If the number is too large, so you will not be able to guarantee Yun Xian'er's safety and she will have to rely on herself. Not long after, so you made a brand new knife. Should I call it a blade knife or a wolf knife? To be honest, it's a bit too rough. You try it. So you threw the knife to Yun Xian'er. Yun Xian'er waved it and cut it on the stone wall again, then nodded, "It's okay, thank you. Don't you want to make one yourself? I don't need these." "That's right." Yun Xian'er looked at the muscular body of So Yu and was immediately in awe. After a short rest, the two continued to walk deeper into the passage. Faint howling could be heard in the dark passage. There seemed to be more and more beasts in here. Chapter 42. After the last wave of blade wolves, So Yu and the others hadn't encountered ruin beasts for a long time. The two were in a state of tense alert, remaining vigilant at all times, not daring to relax at all. "Finally I can take a break. If you stay in the dark underground for a long time, it is easy to lose the concept of time." So you could roughly estimate that about 2 or 3 hours had passed since they entered the underground passage. "So you, how far have we walked?" "About 2.8 kilometers. Hearing his answer, Yun Xian'er was surprised, so precise. So you explained, "I will make a mark every 500 meters, so that if there is any abnormality at the exit, we can return the same way and not get lost." He made many marks on the rock wall with the blood of the Sioux beast. As for how the 500 meters was derived, of course it was measured manually. After extremely intensive physical training and Qin Ziyuan's careful guidance, So Yu has a very clear control over his body. Every time he took a step, the distance between his legs was almost fixed, like a precise machine. It is precisely because of such precise body control that So Yu is able to gain the upper hand in fierce battles time and time again and maximize the advantages of physical skills. Make the most of human physical energy. This method is actually not uncommon. The top athletes in his previous life also had some similar skills. So Yu didn't know how long the underground passage was. At least there is no end in sight. If you come to a fork in the road, what should you choose? Then these signs will have meaning. If Brother Qin can escape from the battle, he can also find the way according to his marks. Although So Yu spoke lightly, the many details in it really made Yun Xian'er admire him. What a thoughtfulness and detail! She felt that her brain had become dumber since she met So Yu. Standing next to So Yu, she even felt ashamed of herself. How can I put it? He really is worthy of being my So God. I feel very safe. I have to be fully alert and not be as depressed as before, she reminded herself secretly. So Yu hadn't encountered an enemy for some time, but he still didn't let his guard down. If he had a choice, he really hoped that all the people who came would be low-level beasts like the Blade Wolf. But things in the world often don't go as we wish. There was some movement in the extremely quiet alley. Did you hear that? Yeah. Yun Xian'er gripped the wolf knife tightly, her expression focused. The sound came from far away and gradually became clearer. Buzz buzz buzz. If you listen carefully, you can tell that it is the sound of something vibrating wildly in the air, and there are quite a lot of them. The sound became louder and louder. In this empty environment, it was as if countless bees were frantically flapping their wings beside their ears, making them feel a little upset. Yun Xian'er emitted a beam of light, and when she saw what it was, she immediately broke out in a cold sweat. It's a dart bee. Primary ruins beast, arrow bee. It's about the same size as an adult. Its defense is very weak, but its offensive power is extremely strong. Since the poisonous stinger at its tail is like an arrow, it is named arrow bee. Its tail stinger is extremely sharp and has strong penetrating power, and can even penetrate reinforced concrete. Moreover, it has barbs on it, making it extremely difficult to pull out once it pierces the body, and even if it is pulled out, it is very difficult to stop the bleeding. Because of its ability to fly, it is a very difficult beast to deal with. A single dart wasp may not be a threat, but if there are hundreds or thousands, then run away. Even a mid to high level Sushib practitioner could suffer serious consequences if he was not careful. In such a narrow alley, there is nowhere to hide when you encounter a saber wasp. It can be said that you are very unlucky. What should we do, So Yu, should we? Yun Xian'er asked worriedly. She anxiously asked whether to bless So Yu, because the arrow bees were too troublesome and the situation was very critical, and it had come to a critical moment of life and death. No matter how strong So Yu's physique is, it's impossible for him to withstand the attack of so many arrow bees, right? However, So Yu shook his head and said, "No, just take care of yourself." Hearing this, Yun Xian'er had no choice but to nod. Although she was still worried deep down, after going through so much, she now instinctively chose to believe Su Yu. The arrow bees are getting closer. Within Su Yu's perception range, they were in groups of hundreds. It was so densely packed that it almost filled up the entire top of the passage. With such a large number, it seems that this is the only trick I can use. Although I am not very proficient yet, it is more than enough to deal with the arrow bees with low defense. After reaching the attack range, before the arrow bee launched an attack, Su Yu took the lead. Mistfoot Lotus Flower. A special extension of the storm kicks, where both feet swing in the air at high speed, leaving after images and emitting a wide range of slashing waves. As Su Yu moved, crescent-shaped slashes flew out from under his feet, sweeping across like chopping melons and vegetables. Caught off guard, the bee colony suffered heavy losses, with corpses falling to the ground like raindrops. But there were too many of them, so the swarms behind them reacted. Then a large amount of rain of arrows attacked Su Yu. For a moment, the empty alley was filled with the clanging sounds of swords clashing. 5 minutes later, Yun Xian'er grabbed the edge of the rock and jumped into the air, splitting a saber bee in half with one knife. Thanks to Su Yu attracting the attention of a large number of bees, she was able to complete the kill so calmly. Looking at the dead bodies of arrow bees all over the ground, admiration appeared in her eyes. These were almost all Su Yu's masterpieces. The blood of the swarm of bees splattered everywhere, as if the walls on both sides were painted yellow. No body was intact. Is physical training really that powerful? How did Su Yu do those slashes? Yun Xian'er was surprised, but also puzzled. She also remembered the first time Su Yu saved her. That's several thousand meters high. How did Su Yu survive? However, since Su Yu didn't say it explicitly, she naturally wouldn't ask any more questions. Let's just attribute these to the diversity of Sushu, that's all we can think of it. On the other side, Su Yu was resting in place. The high frequency of using Lanjiao made him sweat and breathe heavily. This is not the first time he has used this trick. He had tried it before when he was practicing in the buffer zone. Maybe it's because I'm not skilled enough or I'm not strong enough, I just feel like I'm not doing it well enough. Today is the first time to use it in actual combat, and the effect is pretty good. In fact, there are more extension techniques of storm kicks than just Kainiao and Lotus. There are both extremely fast lines and extremely powerful circular breaks. The key is to use it in the right environment to achieve the best effect. After the crisis was resolved, Yun Xian'er carefully walked around the dead bodies of the bees and came to Su Yu. Seeing that Su Yu looked a little serious, she asked, "What's wrong, Su Yu? Don't you find it strange?" Yun Xian'er thought about it for a moment and immediately understood what Su Yu meant. The arrow bee is a ground-dwelling beast, but now it has appeared underground. This is what you are worried about, Su Yu. That's right. That is to say. Before he finished speaking, a familiar voice came to his ears again. Again? Is there a beehive buried underground? Yun Xian'er asked angrily. Su Yu rushed forward in silence. Sensing that the number was about the same as the previous wave, he sneered in his heart. The underground of this city is getting more and more lively. Chapter 43. Who? Ha, who? Su Yu supported himself on the wall with one hand, his chest heaving violently. He looked down at the corpse of the arrow bee at his feet, his eyes a little dazed. Sweat streamed down his cheeks and temples. Because they were underground and the air circulation was poor, breathing so vigorously even made him feel a little dizzy. He blinked hard, trying to clear his vision. Su Yu himself couldn't remember how many times he had used the Lanjiao technique. His current physical condition is far from reaching the level of Luji among pirates. So the sequelae are very obvious, and his thighs are almost numb. It's like a modern person who hasn't exercised for many years suddenly starts exercising like crazy, but ends up feeling sore all over the next day and having difficulty getting out of bed. The feeling of muscle fatigue is so uncomfortable. These swarms seem to be endless. From the beginning to now, Su Yu has killed at least 600 or 700 arrow bees, but there are still signs of stopping. Don't underestimate this number. From the perspective of a junior magician, this is absolutely impossible. Even Jing Yang can't do it. Unless the arrow bee doesn't attack him, just stand still and let him be killed. Only someone with Su Yu's physique could accomplish such a miraculous thing. However, even if he tried so hard, Su Yu still didn't know whether there was another swarm of bees waiting for him ahead. wave after wave, leaving people no chance to breathe. In addition, the injuries caused by the shock from Tiantong have not yet fully healed, and Su Yu is almost reaching his limit. Yun Xian'er is not much better. He was hit by an arrow in his calf and arm, and was bleeding profusely. She didn't dare pull it out, so she just cut it off from the bottom with a knife. If it is pulled out forcibly, even if the bleeding can be stopped by force, the combat effectiveness will be lost. Su Yu, don't force yourself anymore, let me heal you. She looked at Su Yu's tired appearance and felt distressed. She knew very well what kind of fighting power Su Yu had unleashed in each of these encounters. From the third wave onwards, she felt they were about to collapse. In this world, there is no low-level magician who can survive in such an environment until now. Have you ever seen the scene of hundreds of hornets firing their stingers at the same time? The rain of arrows from the sky can turn a person into a sieve. But Su Yu still managed to survive. This endurance even exceeds that of an intermediate-level magician. But everyone has their limits, and Su Yu is no exception. They are now like dancing on a tightrope. If they are not careful, they will be doomed. Yun Xian'er was worried, if she couldn't dodge, who would treat Su Yu's injuries? Let's use it now while she is still alive. But Su Yu still rejected her. He gasped, his voice intermittent but firm, it's not yet time. But Yun Xian'er was so anxious that she was about to cry. Believe me. For some reason, the closer Su Yu got to this deadly situation, the clearer his mind became. The surge of adrenaline even made him extremely excited. Could it be that I have a masochistic constitution? After so many encounters, Su Yu clearly realized that these arrow bees were most likely controlled by someone. Not to mention that saber bees would never appear underground, just based on their habits, it is impossible for them to target one person on a large scale. There are at most a few thousand arrow bees in a beehive, but don't forget that they have to protect the queen bee. It is impossible to return the same way, so we can only keep moving forward and find the mastermind behind the scenes. Su Yu felt a little strange. The enemy seemed to know him very well and behaved unusually cautiously. But he is still an unknown person now. Who could it be? He inexplicably thought of a figure who disappeared in the martial arts exam. You want to use numbers to wear me down? Then let's see who outnumbers whom. Su Yu will never give up until the last moment. Underground, in an empty hall. On both sides are pillars that are more than 10 meters high, and on top are inlaid huge diamond-shaped crystals that emit dazzling light. The retro style makes this place look grand and majestic. There was a long red carpet on the ground, with a figure kneeling in the middle. His figure seemed extremely small in the spacious hall. At the end of the hall, stands a throne. Sitting above is a giant with closed eyes. Its hands were placed quietly on the armrests, motionless, as if it had merged into the entire throne. In the center of the head, there is a gem as bright as a diamond, shining brightly. The giant had an expressionless face, like a statue, but the invisible pressure he exuded made people dare not even think of blaspheming him. Behind the throne, there is an extremely huge light curtain, which is almost as wide as the hall. The light curtain was flashing with a strange luster, as bright and dazzling as the starry sky, and there was a crystal-like and liquid-like substance flowing inside. The kneeling figure on the red carpet had a solemn expression on his face and said loudly, Grand Duke Shi Li, a lower-ranking member of the Silver Clan requests to see you. It turned out that the person kneeling on the ground was the barb who was teleported away during the martial arts exam. The sound of the thorns echoed in the empty hall for a long time. After a long time, a majestic voice sounded. What is it? Hearing the voice, Barb's body bent even lower. I want power, I want to become stronger. To avenge my companions. Dao Sai knew very well that when facing a high-ranking member of the Silver Clan like Grand Duke Shi Li, there was no need to beat around the bush and he could just say whatever he wanted to say. Oh. After a moment of silence, Grand Master Shi Li said slowly, well, I do feel your will. Since you have completed the task brilliantly, I will grant you the power. When the barb below heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up and he showed an ecstatic look. Thank you, Grand Duke. Thank you, Grand Duke. A drop of pure silver blood floated out from Grand Master Shi Li's fingertips. Whether you can bear it or not depends on your own perseverance. Barb nodded, looking nervous. After the blood flowed out, it flew in front of the barb in just a breath of time. Under his expectant gaze, it quickly went into his mouth. Immediately, surging power burst out from his body. Veins popped out from his barbed arms and torso, and he felt his body expanding. I want revenge, revenge for my companions. He gritted his teeth, his desire for revenge overriding everything else. The power is constantly emerging. The body of the barb grew almost a circle larger, its original clothes were completely torn, and rows of spikes began to grow on the spine on its back. Ah! After a few minutes, the reinforcement finally ended. The barb stood up with its own will. He looked at his thick arms and a body that was almost twice his height, his eyes filled with disbelief. This is the power of the high-level silver race. That's awesome, ha 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 ha. So you and Yinxian are no match for me. The surging power in his body made Barb extremely excited. At this moment, he felt that he could kill several silver threads with one punch. There was a dangerous glint in his eyes. Just wait, So you. I'm back. Chapter 44. Just as Barb was immersed in the joy of increasing his strength, two people suddenly appeared in front of him. To be precise, this is a pair of catwomen who look alike. They are very petite, and their height barely reaches the barbed belly. He looks harmless. But Barb didn't dare to underestimate them at all. Even when this pair of twins who looked almost identical appeared, he didn't dare to breathe. They seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, without revealing a trace of presence. The pleasure of power that the Barb had just gained suddenly receded like the tide. These two people are the twin guards of Grandmaster Li Ju and Li. Although they look similar, there are some differences in details. For example, one person's hair is orange, while the other's hair color is more gray-black. At this moment, they were looking at the Barbs curiously. Li, did you see that? He grew up so fast. Ju stretched out his tone, looking surprised. Don't bother with your nonsense. I have eyes. Hey, you've become stronger, thank the Duke. Yes, thank you for your cultivation, Grand Duke. Wei Ci wiped the sweat from his forehead and said quickly. Ju had a pair of amber pupils. She leaned in and sniffed the Barbs, frowned and said, You have a nasty smell. That's human smell, idiot. Oh. So this is what humans taste like. Ju's face showed enlightenment. The Gemini guards were created to protect Grand Duke Shi Li. In other words, they have never left the hall, so they even look a little innocent. However, they still have an instinctive aversion to the human scent. I heard that humans are very fragile creatures. Why are you being bullied by humans? The tail behind him swayed gently as he asked curiously. Why? Barb smiled bitterly. He also wanted to know why. I thought that for this mission, I only needed to focus on Jing Yang, but who knew that Su Yu would suddenly appear? Moreover, compared to the arrogant Jing Yang, Su Yu is obviously much more difficult to deal with. He is ruthless and decisive in his attacks, and once he gains the upper hand, he doesn't give his opponent any chance to turn the tables. If they hadn't had the teleportation barrier given by the White King, they would have probably died there. But this process was too embarrassing, which made Hang Ci very unwilling. There were 4 people in their group, and 2 of their companions died at the hands of Su Yu. How could he not hate Su Yu to the core? Seeing the expression on the face of the thorn, Ju stretched out his claws and touched him distressedly, saying, How pitiful. It's a pity that Tachibana must protect the Grand Duke and cannot leave the palace. Li, who was standing by, saw her helpless look and slapped her on the head with such force that Ju was knocked directly into the ground. A huge crack appeared on the smooth floor and the whole hall seemed to shake. Can you be a little more classy? How can we, the Gemini guards, think of dealing with such a weak human? That's too cheap. I know. I was just saying. Ju scratched his head and stood up as if nothing had happened. Seeing this scene, he gasped in shock. He felt that this slap could kill him directly. At this time, a majestic voice sounded. Okay, stop making trouble. It's the Grand Duke. Ju and Li's cat ears suddenly stood up, and they disappeared on the spot in an instant. The next second, the 2 of them stood on either side of the throne, looking extremely well behaved. Barb, this human you are looking for is him, right? Hang Ci looked up in surprise and saw changes beginning to appear on the light screen behind Grand Duke Shi Li's head. Those fluid-like substances slowly gathered and actually formed the appearance of Su Yu. Hang Ci was horrified and speechless at the miraculous skill. The person you are looking for is in the basement of this city. After Grandmaster Shi Li finished speaking, a ball of light flew out from his palm. Since the Silver Clan attacked Sicheng, they have never lost a battle, and they will not allow themselves to lose. The blood of the God-chosen race cannot be desecrated. Take this and avenge your companions personally. At first, Barb didn't know what it was, but then a piece of information popped up in his mind. It turns out that it is the instructions for use of this ball of light. After knowing the effect, Barb was instantly ecstatic. With this, he can control some low-level beasts, which is undoubtedly the best improvement for him. Taking down Suyu is almost certain. Thank you, Archduke. He knelt on the ground respectfully and thanked him repeatedly. Back off. Yes. With excitement that could hardly be suppressed, Daoci bowed and left the hall. You must pay for the blood of your companions with your life, Suyu. Deep underground. Hang Ci sat cross-legged on the ground with his eyes closed, with a light ball floating in front of his chest that could control thousands of Su beasts. Several hours have passed since I started controlling the ruin beast. He was extremely grateful to Grandmaster Shi Li for giving him such a convenient thing. Barb is not stupid, he chose the safest way to play. That is a war of attrition. Don't forget, even the arrogant silver line fell at Suyu's feet. He still hasn't figured out how strong Suyu is. Even though he had been strengthened by the Grand Duke, he could not say for sure that he could defeat Suyu. Plus, the human woman next to him seemed to possess strange abilities. So this time, he won't be so reckless. Don't keep saying you're avenging your comrades, only to end up getting killed in vain. Being cautious and careful is his style. Otherwise, he wouldn't have run away. He deliberately chose the arrow bee as a beast, which was undoubtedly the most suitable in the open underground without any shelter. He considered every aspect to the utmost. This is indeed the case. After waves of consumption, it is obvious that Suyu is beginning to be unable to cope. GCI already thought highly of Suyu, but he could not have imagined that Suyu could hold on for so long. With hundreds and thousands of arrow bees coming one after another, even he couldn't hold out for long. Suyu's abnormal physique made the Thorns marvel. The genius boy among humans should not be underestimated. Fortunately, I chose this combat plan, otherwise I might have really failed. Mean? No, it's respect. He has respected Suyu to the greatest extent. As an opponent and enemy, he even admires Suyu a little. But, that's where it ends. As he sent out the last wave of arrow bees, he slowly stood up. No matter how strong Suyu is, he must be at the end of his strength at this moment. He clenched his fists, feeling the new strength in his body, and wanted to let out a long roar to express his feelings at the moment. The scene of him escaping in shame is still vivid in his mind, but this time, he will be the winner. Silver thread, even though you look down on me, Barb, I am the only one who can avenge you now. Barb pounded his chest hard, making muffled bang-bang sounds, as if he wanted to convey the anger and determination in his heart to another world. My lost companions, have you ever heard the voice of revenge? At this moment, his sense of mission reached its peak. The state has been adjusted to the best. The tall body of the Thorn squatted down, leaned forward slightly, and took a sprinting posture. There was a sharp gleam in his eyes, like a beast about to pounce on its prey. The next moment, he shot out like an arrow. Barb, attack! Chapter 45. Where are the limits of human beings? Suyu doesn't know. But now, he really felt his limits. He knelt on one knee, looking at his trembling hands, his consciousness becoming blurred. The continuous fighting exhausted his physical strength, and Suyu even felt that his body did not belong to him anymore. The whole person seems to be above the clouds, floating lightly. No matter how strong he is, he has only been practicing for more than 2 months, and he has been able to persist until now only because of his will to survive. From the first time they encountered the arrow bee to now, it took him and Yun Xianer nearly 2 hours to walk a total of 1,000 meters. Behind him were hundreds of corpses piled up like a mountain. I'm so thirsty and want to rest. I really want to take a nap. He killed almost all the arrow bees in a hive, so there should be no more of them now. In the underground passage, the annoying buzzing sound finally ended. Suyu and Yun Xianer got a temporary respite. If there really was someone behind all this, then he was overestimating himself by mobilizing an entire hive of arrow bees to deal with him. On the side, Yun Xianer was also extremely weak. Her lips were dry and she said weakly, Suyu, if you don't get treatment, there will be no chance. I see. Suyu understood that no matter what happened at this time, he had to recover quickly. No matter if there are more enemies next, we have to hold on as long as we can. Then, suddenly, he felt something and his face changed. Get out of the way. He used his last bit of strength to push Yunxian away. In the air, several cold lights came flying at a high speed. Suyu barely dodged one, but was still hit. 2 sharp spikes pierced his body, he groaned and fell heavily to the ground. At the same time, Yunxian, who was pushed away, reacted extremely quickly. Although she did not see the enemy, she knew that this was the most critical moment. She raised her gun without hesitation and cast the last healing spell she had been holding back on Suyu. It's up to you, Suyu. She slowly closed her eyes. Due to exhaustion and prolonged blood loss, she finally couldn't hold on any longer, lost consciousness and passed out. Suyu had just fallen down when Yunxian's treatment arrived, which was quite fast. After fighting side by side for such a long time, the two have developed a very tacit understanding of cooperation. The emerald green light representing life bloomed in the dark alley, and Suyu's body began to recover rapidly, as if a long drought had finally come to an end. The wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye, and even his face looked a little rosier. Although he cannot recover to his full strength, 30% to 40% of his combat power is enough. As an intermediate-level magician, Yunxian's auxiliary ability is already so amazing that Suyu dare not imagine what it will be like when she reaches a higher level. But now is not the time to think about these things, because the enemy is approaching. Boom, boom. It seemed as if some huge monster was running in this alley. It is obvious that this time it is not a saber bee. Suyu maximized his perception and thought to himself, the real master is finally here. The figure is getting closer. But when Suyu saw the man's appearance, he was a little surprised. Isn't this the Silver Clan member who disappeared with him during the martial arts exam? But was he this tall before? The more than 2-meter-high barbs standing in the alley give people a huge sense of oppression. He sprinted at an extremely fast speed. When he met Suyu, he rushed over without any nonsense. No matter what, let's test his strength first. Suyu had a plan in mind. Shave. The distance between the two people was instantly shortened. He still started by shaving his hands. Because he was not in good condition at the moment, Suyu planned to make a quick decision. Many people couldn't react to this move. Just when he was about to punch, he saw a strange smile on the face of the man with the spike, and he immediately felt something was wrong. Humph! Do you think I, a barb, will suffer such a loss? Ha ha ha! Ruin's technique, spikes on the body surface. Yes, the barbs really couldn't react. But he had already prepared for it. After being strengthened by Grandmaster Shi Li, he finally possessed his own Sushu. He was so eager to defeat Suyu that he actually evolved this ability. As soon as he finished speaking, rows of densely packed barbs grew on his silver-grey skin, flashing sharp cold light. The barbs at this time looked like a human-shaped hedgehog. Caught off guard, Suyu's offensive suddenly came to a halt. It's not over yet. Barb yelled. Put. The spikes on his body can actually be released. Countless needles shot out with the barbs as the center. Suyu was shocked and could only protect his head with both hands, iron block. The spikes hit Suyu and the surrounding walls, making a ding-dang-dang sound. Barb took advantage of the situation and delivered a heavy punch to Suyu's abdomen. Looking at Suyu who was knocked away by him, Hang Ci was so excited that he couldn't control himself. Cool. It's so cool. Is this the pleasure of revenge? It comes faster than I imagined. The person who defeated Silver Line is only at this level and is vulnerable to his barbs. See? This is the power of my barbs, human. The speed you're so proud of is useless, what else can you do? Suyu's condition at this moment looked very bad. Although he used iron blocks, he was still hit by many spikes because his strength had not fully recovered. He was hit by the barb again, causing him to spit out a mouthful of blood. The spent force is the most appropriate way to describe Suyu's current condition. However, even in this desperate situation, Hang Ci did not see any panic expression on Suyu's face, but instead became very cold. Pretending to be calm? Or do you have a backup plan? But I won't give you another chance, thought Barb. He jumped and pounced towards Suyu. On the opposite side, Suyu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and a hint of cruelty flashed in his eyes. He murmured, 1 minute. 1 minute, I'll take care of you. Heyday posture. The ability saved until the end was stimulated by Suyu at this moment. He suddenly felt his whole body burning hot, and an indescribable power flowed out from every part of his limbs. Although it will burn his vitality, he was already at low health anyway, so it didn't matter. Shave. Suyu still used the same trick. A shadow quickly left behind at the spot, and it seemed as if a hurricane was set off in the underground passage. When Hang Ci saw Suyu disappear, he immediately realized something. He laughed contemptuously, no matter how many times you try, it's useless. Spikes on the body. Are all human heads made of iron? Well, then I'll let you experience the feeling of being pierced by thousands of needles again. Will it be different this time? You guys really love shooting arrows. Suyu was really fed up. For several hours, he was kited back and forth by long-range attacks. It's like a top-lane warrior facing a ranged AD. Only those who have experienced it personally will understand how it feels. Even a clay figure would have some temper, let alone him. He clenched his fists and charged forward with anger. Iron, break! The iron block stretching technique, after the whole body is hardened, the punch is powerful enough to break the hard ground. The fist made of steel, with unrivaled power, smashed into the face of the thorn. Bang! The air seemed to vibrate. Barb's expression changed from smugness, to surprise, to disbelief. His face was hit so hard that it quickly sank. Those spikes that he was so proud of could no longer protect him at all. The whole person seemed to be hit by a speeding truck, and his burly body was directly sent flying. It slid along the ground for more than 10 meters. Chapter 46. The thorn was stunned by Suyu's punch. The huge impact force made him feel dizzy. Lying on the ground, he turned his head and spat out a mouthful of blood with a few teeth mixed in it. All the revenge and mission disappeared into thin air. All that remained in his mind were endless questions. It shouldn't be like this. Why does Suyu still have the fighting power? Was the previous weakness just pretend? How could a low-level magician still have the energy to kill thousands of arrow bees by himself? Am I crazy, or is the world crazy? Is there such an outrageous thing in the world? Am I the Silver Clan or is he the Silver Clan? But he was cautious enough and had no intention of underestimating Suyu. He first used the arrow bees to exhaust Suyu's physical strength, and then attacked with lightning speed. No matter from which angle you look at it, his operation is impeccable. So what went wrong? The high spirits and energy of a few seconds ago seemed to be still vivid in front of my eyes, as if it was just a dream. Damn it, it hurts so much. Damn Suyu! Hanged Thorn cursed in his heart, but his eyes revealed endless fear. In the deep passage, Suyu was like a bloodthirsty ghost, shuttling through the darkness, making people shudder. Before Hang Ci could struggle to get up, Suyu suddenly fell from the sky. Iron, break! A kick hit him right in the chest. Puff! His barbed and bloodshot eyes widened instantly. With this kick, he felt like he was half dead. The ground was shaken and cracks appeared. Suyu's attack was like a tide and never stopped. He vented all his previous anger on the barbs. The barbs have no power to fight back and can only act as a sandbag and passively take a beating. 1 minute later, he knelt in front of Suyu, with his neck tightly strangled by Suyu. Consciousness has long been cloudy. Who? His mouth was wide open, his face was swollen like a pig's head, and his chest was rising and falling very weakly. In just 1 minute, the situations of the two men changed completely, and at this moment he was the one at the end of his strength. So, is this Suyu's true strength? Hanged Thorn felt bitter in his heart. No wonder the Silver Line lost. It's not unfair that I lost. He did everything he could, but Suyu was too cruel. Revenge, my comrade, revenge, you. He was saying something tremblingly. At this time, the fire of revenge in Barb's heart had not yet been extinguished. Revenge. Suyu laughed out of anger. He suddenly pulled the barbed body towards him and stared into his eyes. What qualifications do you have to talk about revenge? In just 2 days, countless people in Sicheng were killed or injured. There are more than 1 broken families. What about them? Who will they seek revenge on? Cheng Phelan, Xiaoling and many other young people in their prime years and full of dreams all died innocently in this disaster. Thinking of the tragic situation in Sicheng and Xiaoling's appearance when she was dying, Suyu felt extremely sad. Brother Qin, President Yunli's life or death is uncertain now. And his enemy, the Silver Clan who suddenly appeared, actually talked about revenge in front of him? Stop joking. Suyu was so angry for the first time in his life. He knew that in the end times, human life was worthless, but it was not until he experienced it himself that he truly realized the cruelty. It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned the thorn, but this statement instantly ignited Suryu's anger. We are the ones who deserve revenge. He clenched his fist, gathering all the emotions that had been suppressed in his heart for a long time into this punch. Bang! After a loud bang, there was no sound. When he was dying, his eyes revealed the fear of life and death and a hint of confusion. Why am I so obsessed with revenge? Are you unwilling, or? He didn't understand why he was so persistent. Deep in his soul, it seemed as if someone was constantly telling him, you must avenge your companions. You must protect your companions and the people around you. Who is it? He shouted loudly in confusion. No one responded to him. There was silence all around, and after a moment, Barb's consciousness completely disappeared. As soon as Suryu's hand loosened, he fell to the ground with a bang, as if all his strength had been drained away. The effect of the heyday posture had long passed, and in the following time, he was completely supported by willpower and anger. He let out a puff and spat out a large mouthful of blood. After 2 days of mental stress and high-intensity combat, Suryu was already exhausted. This attack even triggered the injuries caused by Tiantong before, and his body immediately collapsed like a collapsed river embankment. He could no longer hold on, his eyes went dark, and he fainted on the cold ground. Silence returned to the dark alley again. No one knew that several fierce battles had taken place here. Suryu and Yun Xianer were both seriously injured. This long underground passage seemed to have no end, as if it had turned into a life-eating beast, ruthlessly devouring the living beings here. There was silence in the underground temple. One of the twins, Ju, was licking his paw out of boredom. Suddenly, a faint sigh was heard. I still didn't do it after all. It's Grand Duke Shili. Ju's body instantly stood straight. Grand Duke, what's wrong? That young man just now is already dead. Ah! Ju's pupils suddenly widened in disbelief. Did I lose to that human? She thought of Suryu whom she had seen on the screen before. Certainly. This. Ju had mixed feelings in his heart, as he was clearly alive and kicking in front of him not long ago. Should I act sad at this time? Although she was not very familiar with Barb, she could feel Barb's eagerness to avenge his companions. What a pity. Humph, he got the blood of the Grand Duke and gave him the ability to control the ruins beasts. He still lost after doing this. What a loser. Li looked disdainful. If she were to do it, it wouldn't be that difficult. Li, you can't say that. Maybe they have already tried their best. Perhaps, that human is too strong. Ju said reluctantly. Li looked at her like she was a fool and said, you can be called strong just for defeating a low-ranking Silver Clan member. I see you've been guarding here all day, are you out of your mind? Okay, you are the best, you are invincible, okay, really. Ju rolled his eyes and turned his head away angrily. Is there any need to say that? It's a pity that the twins can't leave this hall, otherwise, Okay, be quiet, said Grand Duke Shili. Every life has its own destiny, which cannot be forced. Although he died, his soul will eventually return to the sea of life and rest in peace. Suddenly, he seemed to have received some information, and there was a slight fluctuation in his calm voice. It's almost over with the White King. Really? Ju said excitedly. Good. As expected of Lord Bai Wang. By the way, it seems that the big guy is also in there. The big guy naturally refers to Gut, who has been guarding the White King. Although the Geminis have been protecting Grand Duke Shili, they also know that the White King is fighting against a powerful human. I heard that he was a human with lightning speed and was one of the strongest among humans. Ju was very curious. Her speed was also very fast. I wonder how it compared to lightning? She was not as competitive as Li. She was purely curious. In her simple mind, as long as she could stay with the Grand Duke and Li all the time, she would be very happy. I heard from King Bai that if Ling Ye is eliminated, humans will no longer be a threat. This is a strategic victory. She doesn't really understand what strategy means, as long as she can win, that's fine. White King Iris is the goddess in the eyes of all the Silver Clan members. Even Grand Duke Shili was very happy when he heard the news of her imminent victory. He couldn't help but sigh, the hypocritical fire thief will eventually face judgment, and the pure White Queen will hold the fruits of victory. The light of the God of Ruins will eventually sweep across this world. Ju pouted and whispered, the Duke is saying weird things again. Bang! A loud slap came down. Be serious. Li frowned. Oh. Li looked solemn and placed his right hand on his chest. May the light of the ruins God shine upon us. May the light of the ruins God shine upon us. Chapter 47. It is said that humans in ancient times liked to look up at the starry sky and observe the mysteries of the universe. But in fact, people nowadays can no longer see the starry sky. The sky seemed to be covered by a curtain, always gloomy, especially at night, when not a single star could be seen. This is especially true today. Even though the sun is shining, I can still feel a hint of gloom. It felt like something was about to collapse. At 7 p.m., near the headquarters of the Sicheng Patrol Guard. At this time, more than 40 hours had passed since the martial arts examination incident. There is no trace of human life in this area. The city with tall buildings has become a habitat for monsters. Near a ruined building, all kinds of beasts can be seen everywhere. Some of them were lying on the road, while others were lying on the roof. There are so many that it is impossible to count them. After an unknown amount of time, a strong aura came from above their heads. Roar woo! The beasts in the ruins began to howl anxiously. The aura was so strong that many low-level beasts crawled on the ground in fear, not daring to move at all. Suddenly, there was a click sound. It was like the sound of an eggshell breaking, and cracks appeared in the transparent space. Immediately afterwards, a pillar of light that penetrated the sky and the earth shot up into the sky, cutting through the clouds and lighting up the entire sky. Like the roar of gods, 9 days of thunder came down to punish the evildoers. Now, not only the low-level beasts, but even the high-level beasts were overwhelmed by this momentum. Some lower-ranking Silver Clan members who were on guard in the surrounding area were frightened to the point of kneeling on the ground, trembling. The beam of light lasted for several minutes before slowly dissipating. Many Silver Clan members looked up with lingering fear, with terror still lingering on their faces. And where they could not see, the beam of light that penetrated the clouds split into two, turned into two meteors, and quickly separated at a speed that was difficult to observe with the naked eye, and disappeared on the spot. The huge momentum finally subsided. The Silver Clan finally got a chance to catch their breath and stood up from the ground one after another. They looked up to the sky, wondering who had won. How's it going? Did Lord Bai win? Is there any need to say that? White King Iris is sacred in the eyes of all Silver Clan members. Holiness, kindness, power, and wisdom are her hallmarks. They simply couldn't imagine that the White King would lose. Look! Suddenly, someone pointed to the sky excitedly. There, a figure was suspended. This figure possessed a pair of flawless white wings and a breathtakingly perfect face. It was none other than the god in their hearts, Lady Iris. Iris stood with her back to the rising sun, a faint golden light emanating from her body, making people dare not look directly at her. At her feet were dilapidated ruins and countless motionless ferocious beasts. Under the sunlight, Iris looked like something otherworldly. The two completely opposite scenes are intertwined to form a picture that is both weird and holy. God, I seem to have seen God. Eli is an adult. When everyone saw this scene, they knelt down involuntarily, with pious expressions as if they were believers in God. However, no one noticed that their God seemed to be in a bad state. High in the sky, Iris's face was pale and her breath was extremely weak. A lot of skin and flesh on his body have not yet recovered, just like a beautiful dress with several big holes cut out. She sighed with lingering fear, Ling Yat, you are such a terrible person. The barrier set up by Iris was eventually broken by Ling Yat. This was something she had not anticipated. You know, she put nearly 10 years of hard work into creating this barrier. Not only does it have to be silent and shield against breath, it also has to be extremely strong. It is so strong that even the strongest man cannot break it in a short time. The difficulty can be imagined. She is the only one in the world who has this skill. It took her several months just to set up this barrier. Even so, it was still broken by Ling Yat. Unfortunately, the price he paid was his life. The building where they were previously located had long been reduced to ruins. On a rock platform not far away, Gut was also feeling uncomfortable. He had always been proud and arrogant, but Ling Ye had made him withdrawn and he sat there alone, speechless. If it weren't for the body given by the god of ruins, he would have died long ago. Beside him, Ling Ye was lying quietly on the ground. After burning out his last bit of vitality and exhausting his internal energy, his body quickly withered away like a mummy, without any trace of the former Yun Zongtianshan. But Gut never dared to underestimate this man again. He looked at Ling Ye with great respect. This powerful human being defeated him. Ling Ye is a true warrior and deserves his respect. Iris came floating in. She had obviously won the victory with great difficulty, but her expression did not show any excitement, but rather some sadness. She looked at Ling Ye and seemed to feel his emotions before his death. Ling Ye, you are the most outstanding person I have ever met in the past 100 years. Your talents and abilities are impeccable, and you have done your best for humanity. Thinking of this, a trace of sadness flashed in her eyes, but, after all, we are not on the same path. It was precisely because he understood Ling Ye so well and knew how terrifying he was that he was able to set up a scheme that lasted for 10 years. It was precisely because she understood him that Iris knew that there was no way Ling Ye would get on her ship. This method is shameful and despicable, but in order to practice the path predicted by the God of Ruins and for her ideals, she has no choice but to do this. Ling Ye's ability is too dangerous. If he doesn't get rid of him, he will be unable to move forward. Ling Ye, your talent, ability, and willpower are rare in the world. You are an outstanding person known throughout the world, but under the general trend, all obstacles will be ruthlessly destroyed. Your death will bring new life to everyone, a new life for the whole world. I swear. So, rest in peace. Iris was no longer a person who was controlled by emotions, and she returned to normal after a while. At this moment, another figure floated over from the distance. There were many strange eyeballs floating around him, which were Tian Tong, one of the upper-level Silver Clan. Tian Tong glanced around, then frowned and looked at Gu Ti, and said coldly, Gu Ti, is this how you protect His Highness? He had never seen Elise so vulnerable. He was already feeling extremely annoyed because he was delayed by those two bugs, and now seeing Iris was so seriously injured, the rage in his heart was even harder to contain. A hint of dangerous aura emanated from him. If I had known this would happen, I would have let me do it. Facing Tian Tong's gaze, Gut let out a breath through his nose, lowered his head and said nothing. He did fail to protect Lord Bai. It was his dereliction of duty and he would not deny it. If Tian Tong attacked him out of anger, he would never resist. Okay, Tian Tong, calm down. Gu Ti has done his best. We have already agreed on this. Gut has a good physique and is resistant to attack, which you don't have. If Gut hadn't restrained Ling Ye, the outcome of this battle would have been hard to predict. Tian Tong also knew this, but he still felt a little angry when he saw Iris's condition. I could only humph and say nothing more. Now that the plan has been successfully completed, what should we do next? Iris said softly, don't worry about it now. Gut and I were seriously injured this time and it will take some time to recover. During this time, you will lead everyone to stay nearby. Yes, Your Highness. Gut, you have to cheer up quickly. You are a warrior and you can't lose your fighting spirit. There are still many strong people in the human race, and we will need you to support us when the time comes. Elise knew that Gut was belligerent and somewhat arrogant, but this would undoubtedly be a good lesson. Although they won, it was not glorious, and Gut might feel uncomfortable. Elise hoped he would recover soon. I hope this experience will make him stronger. I understand. Lady Iris. Gut's eyes were filled with tears. He didn't expect that the White King would not blame him. The uncomfortable feeling in my heart faded a little. Next time, he will be stronger. Iris turned around and looked into the distance quietly. Her eyes seemed to pass beyond the scene in front of her and look towards the more distant horizon. She thought to herself, if Ling Ye is dead, there might be some movement over there. Ling Ye's death is just the starting point of everything. The final curtain has just been raised. The storm will sweep across everyone in this world until it drowns them all and usher in a new life. Chapter 48. An hour ago. A few kilometers away from the patrol department headquarters building. This used to be a hotel building, but it is now empty. A huge gap was cut on the top of the hotel, and the cut was smooth and flat, as if it had been cut by an extremely sharp blade. Clearly, there had been a terrible disaster. The surrounding streets were littered with broken building debris and broken glass. Top floor of the hotel. A breeze blew, and a voice was heard in this empty place. Captain Wang, what did you see? I saw nothing. No, there are so many ruins beasts, but there is no movement at all. I was just wondering, this is too strange. Where have I ever seen such a well-behaved beast? Could it be that Lieutenant Nancy really guessed right? That's called reasonable analysis. How come you think it's nonsense? After all, it's too outrageous. Talking about protecting their king or something like that is so childish. Read less comics. It turned out that this was a duo from the patrol department. The two of them lay on the cold ground, holding binoculars, with a camouflage light blanket on their backs, blending perfectly with the surrounding environment. In order to avoid the detection of the ruins beast. After the meeting, Director Sun planned to send someone to investigate the situation. All the drones they had sent out before disappeared mysteriously. There is no doubt that this is an extremely dangerous mission, and there is a high probability that there will be no return. But there are still many people from the patrol department who volunteered. In the face of danger, many people have shown unprecedented courage. In the end, Sun Qizi selected 2 people and told them not to get too close and to focus on reconnaissance. If you encounter danger, you can retreat immediately. That's why this scene happened. Captain Wang and his men had been lying here for half a day, and apart from watching the beasts eat, drink, defecate and urinate, they had not obtained any useful information. But it is indeed as Nancy said, the beasts in the ruins are a little strangely quiet, one can even describe them as well behaved. They suppressed their own breath to the lowest level and continued to observe carefully and seriously. This continued for an hour. A blue light broke through the sky. Even though we are so far apart, I can still feel the strong sense of oppression. Captain Wang and his teammates looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. This aura is of special grade. That should be correct. This is definitely the power that only a special grade Ling Ye can achieve. Lieutenant Nancy guessed it right. Hurry up and pass the news back. Ling Ye special is still alive. The teammates could not hide their excitement, and the meaning of this news was self-evident. Maybe the special class has killed all the enemy's high-level officials. You know, Ling Yi's hometown is Sicheng, which is undoubtedly the greatest encouragement to them. It's not impossible to work backwards. Wait. Something's wrong. What's the matter, Captain Wang? Just finish what you are saying, the teammate wondered. I didn't see Ling Ye special grade. Captain Wang carefully adjusted the angle of the telescope and observed the distant scene carefully through the eyepiece. In his field of vision, he only saw some strange-looking humanoid creatures. According to what Nancy said, it must be the Silver Clan. And he is most likely their leader. An angel? A mountain troll? And another one. Damn, so many eyes. Just as Captain Wang was observing carefully, the strange man with eyes all over his body suddenly turned around, and his eyes went straight through the telescope and looked into his eyes. Captain Wang felt as if struck by lightning. His body began to panic for some unknown reason, and the telescope in his hand fell uncontrollably. His teammates noticed that he looked a little pale, and they had a bad feeling in their hearts. They asked anxiously, "How is it? Did you find anything? See for yourself." When his teammates took the telescope and took a look, they gasped. Hiss. Hello. I am not seeing things. Could that dried corpse lying on the ground be Ling Yi special grade? Ling Ye, dead? It was as if something collapsed in his heart, and his face was dull and incredulous. Captain Wang looked at him and remained silent. He knew very well what it would mean and what kind of shock it would cause if Ling Ye died in battle. It took a while for the teammate to come back to his senses and said with difficulty, "Captain Wang, what should we do now?" "Send the news and images back first, so that everyone can know. The message will be uploaded soon." Their mission has been completed, but Captain Wang is feeling somewhat uneasy now as he seemed to have made eye contact with the monster just now. "It is not advisable to stay here for long, we must evacuate immediately." Both of them were well-trained soldiers and their movements were quick and decisive. And just in the sky where they could not see, a strange black eyeball appeared at some point. It just floats there quietly, taking in everything that's happening in Sicheng. 2 blue flying stars flashed by in the sky. When they passed the huge dark hole in the center of the city, they dispersed. One of the flying stars flew straight to the northeast, and the other one drilled directly into the deep ground. To the northeast, a group of people wearing Susha Guild uniforms were being attacked. Among them was Jing Yang. It turned out that after he met Chen Haisheng that night, he was entangled with him. Although he couldn't escape, he secretly used the emergency call device and called his family over. The Jing family is indeed a famous family in Sicheng. In order to rescue Jing Yang, they actually sent a senior magician to lead the team. The machinery factory was far away from the city center, and they did not encounter any high-level beasts along the way. Facing a high-level magician, Chen Haisheng had no power to resist at all. Just as Jing Yang was about to be killed, the senior magician quickly broke into the factory and ended the battle cleanly and efficiently. Chen Haisheng no longer looked like a human being. Many parts of his skin were covered with a layer of dark scales. Looking closely, it seemed to be a kind of metal. His entire body seemed to have merged into the surrounding metal. His face was completely covered with scales, and the only eye that was exposed revealed a deep hatred. "Master, do you know this person?" The team leader was a little confused. What kind of creature was this thing, which was neither a beast nor a human? Jing Yang shook his head and said, "I don't know him. He is just a poor man." There was a hint of deep fear hidden deep in Jin Jiang's eyes. The leader didn't have time to care about these things. He looked quite anxious. "Time is running out. Let's get out of here quickly." Jing Yang nodded. "Although I left, night was not a good time. Too much noise will attract the night demon, and then more and more beasts will gather and it will be difficult to deal with. So they chose daytime. On the way back, we encountered many beasts, and we stopped and walked frequently, which delayed us for another day. Until now, they were surrounded by a swarm of arrow bees. Because the noise was so loud, it even attracted a high-level ruin beast. The leading high-level ruin master hurried forward to stop it. The rest are just mid-level or advanced-level magicians. They accidentally broke into the nest of the arrow bees. To be more precise, they were forced here by the high-level ruins beast. The rescue team was not that elite. They were surrounded by thousands of arrow bees and were in a state of panic. God knows why there are so many arrow bees here. Over the past 2 days, several people have been killed. Faced with so many arrow bees, even a senior ruin master would find it difficult to cope with them, not to mention that he had to protect the seriously injured Yang Yang. With a puff sound, another magician fell beside Jing Yang. His entire body was pierced by more than a dozen tail needles, like a hedgehog. The tail needle flashes with a chilling cold light, making people shudder. Not everyone has a body of steel. Most practitioners of Sushu have spent their entire lives studying Sushu and have long forgotten how to cultivate their bodies. It has been the mainstream for 200 years. Damn it, who defined the arrow bee as a primary ruin beast? There are too many to handle. We are all going to die here. Chapter 49. Faced with countless arrow bees, everyone fell into despair. Although they hid in the bunker, it was only a matter of time before they were completely wiped out. Jing Yang watched all this coldly. People who came to rescue him fell one by one, but his expression did not change at all. He was severely beaten by Chen Haisheng and nearly died. He has not recovered yet. At this moment, he felt as if his life was entering a countdown. Sooner or later, everyone will die. But Jing Yang felt unwilling to see his death so unclear. What's the difference between this and a stray dog dying on the roadside? He died an ordinary death and no one would remember him. Arrow bee, ha! Jing Yang said self-deprecatingly. He had never thought that one day he would die at the hands of such a low-level beast. Just when everyone was in despair, a ray of light seemed to flash in the sky. A meteor streaked across the sky and fell with a loud bang. The dazzling light seems to dispel all darkness. Time seemed to stand still at this moment. When the rescue team came to their senses, they were shocked to find that the overwhelming number of arrow bees had disappeared without a trace, leaving only charred corpses and debris on the ground. Survival came so quickly that many people were left bewildered. What happened? Who saved us? And Yang Yang on the side suddenly closed his eyes, as if he was in some state. When he opened his eyes again, he saw an unfamiliar space in front of him. There seemed to be flashes of lightning in the distance. Here it is. Strange, wasn't he being besieged by arrow bees before? How come he suddenly appeared here? And that light? Hey, boy! A voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Jing Yang turned around suddenly, and when he saw the man's appearance clearly, he couldn't hide his shock. Ling! Ling Yi special grade. It's me. But why are you here? Jing Yang's mind went blank and he spoke incoherently. Don't be nervous, this is my consciousness space. Ling Ye smiled and explained, this space can't last long. Just listen to me. First, I died. Stop yelling and listen to me. Ling Ye said unhappily. In the next few minutes, Ling Ye told Jing Yang the whole cause and process of the incident. He was trapped in the barrier and fought with 2 disaster-level monsters for 2 days and 2 nights. Unfortunately, I lost in the end because of one move. However, Ling Ye did not gain nothing in this battle. He gradually learned about the characteristics and secrets of the Silver Clan, and even touched upon some hidden truths, which shocked him. Ling Ye knew that if he continued to fight, he would only be exhausted to death. It can be said that the death was meaningless. So while he still had some strength left, he burned his life and made a desperate attack, barely breaking the barrier. Before he died, he deliberately left behind this consciousness in order to leave important information for those who came after him. After hearing this, Jing Yang still felt a little dreamy and it felt too unreal. But Ling Ye was actually in front of him at this moment. So, the special class can be killed, he murmured in his heart. He didn't understand why he had such thoughts. He should be sad. He had always believed that the special class of the temple was invincible. Especially Ling Ye, who has always been his role model and goal. But at this time, he received the news of his death in this way, and Jing Yang's brain was extremely confused for a moment. Your name is Jing Yang, right? You must listen carefully to every word I say next. Ling Ye interrupted his thoughts. Jing Yang was shocked and said quickly, yes. The leader of the Silver Clan currently seems to be the one named Iris. In addition to her ability to control minds, she is also good at creating barriers, and her level is among the best. There is also a natural disaster level giant humanoid beast, Gut. In addition to being very strong and resistant to blows, he can also control rocks. He is also a very difficult enemy. And I suspect there are more than one like Gut, so be extra careful. I've severely injured both Elise and Gut. Even though they have abnormal recovery abilities, it will probably take several months for them to recover to their full strength. This period of time is our chance. This time was obtained by Ling Ye through countless attacks. The stronger a person's spiritual power is, the more energy he consumes. By observing their recovery and making precise calculations in his brain, Ling Ye came to this conclusion. Each time you kill them, the time required to recover will obviously increase slowly. Even a few tenths of a second was enough to prove that they were not as invincible as they claimed. Finally, after Ling Ye explained some details, he patted Jing Yang on the shoulder and said, you have to stay alive, Jing Yang, and bring this information to the temple. It is no exaggeration to say that the future of humanity is now in your hands. This burden may be too heavy for you to bear, but I have no other choice. There was a hint of hope for Jing Yang in Ling Yi's sigh. This hope, coupled with Ling Yi's identity, instantly ignited Jing Yang's passion. After all, he was still a young man, so he shouted, please rest assured, Master Ling Ye, I will bring the information back even if I die. That's good. Ling Ye smiled with relief. He finally looked at Jing Yang with a guilty look, and then his body slowly turned into pieces. A helpless sigh sounded slowly, and the space dissipated. When Jing Yang woke up again, he opened his eyes and saw his own senior magician. He was looking at Jing Yang anxiously and asked, young master, what's wrong with you? Jing Yang opened his mouth, stunned, recalling everything that had just happened in his mind. He knew that it was definitely not a dream. That was the responsibility entrusted to him by Ling Ye, and it was key information concerning the life and death of mankind. Responsibility. Thinking of this, his expression became resolute, as if a flame was burning in his eyes. Let's go. He said lightly. He is Jing Yang, how could he die so quietly? He must live with this responsibility and become the strongest man in the world. At the same time, somewhere deep underground. On the ceiling, groundwater seeped out through the cracks in the rock wall. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Drops of water kept dripping on Yun Xianer's forehead, the sound was crisp and rhythmic, echoing in the endless darkness. Yun Xianer lay quietly on the ground, her brows furrowed and her eyes slightly closed, as if she was immersed in a nightmare. Her face and body were covered with scars and dust, and her originally beautiful face became haggard. She didn't know how much time had passed, but as if she felt a chill, she woke up hazily. It hurts. As soon as she woke up, she covered her arm and cried out in pain. Chapter 50. Yun Xianer looked around in confusion, and all she saw was darkness. Only the faint sound of dripping water echoed in my ears. How long have I been unconscious? She muttered to herself, feeling a little uneasy. By the way, where is Suyu? Suyu, where are you? She called Suyu's name softly, but got no response. An ominous premonition suddenly came over her, and her mind was in a mess. We have to find Suyu. Yun Xianer gritted her teeth, endured the severe pain and stood up by holding on to the rock wall. Then a faint light emerged from her fingertips and she slowly groped forward. There were traces of fighting all around, and even the walls on both sides had many dents. Looking at the blood that had long dried on the ground, she realized that she seemed to have lost consciousness for a long time. She became even more anxious. What on earth had happened during the time she was unconscious? Not only that, she also found a long drag mark on the ground. She swallowed nervously and walked forward carefully along the drag mark. There were two figures lying on the ground in front of them. One of them was someone she was very familiar with. Suyu. She quickened her pace and bumped into a rock without noticing, and fell directly next to Suyu. Yun Xian'er made such a big noise, but Suyu didn't react at all and still lay there motionless. She ignored his injuries and hurried to help Suyu up. She found that he was pale and his breathing was very weak. Fortunately, he is still alive. However, if this situation is not treated in time, it is likely to. We need treatment quickly. Yun Xian'er was extremely anxious. She subconsciously wanted to reach out and touch Shue'er, but suddenly she remembered something and froze in place. No, the last chance for treatment has already been used up. Yun Xian'er was completely stunned. The outstretched hand remained frozen in place. Yes, the last chance has been used, and the ruin crystal has been consumed long ago. Doesn't that mean she can only watch Suyu die? What do I do? Yun Xian'er stared at her hands helplessly, lost in thought. In a trance, she seemed to have returned to a day more than 10 years ago. That day, a friend who often played together fell and got injured, so someone suggested, Yun Xian'er, don't you know how to heal him? Hurry up and heal him. Yes, yes. I heard from my mother that the healing technique is very valuable. Friends praised it one after another and all wanted to see the magic of the healing technique. How could a child withstand such admiration? Yun Xian'er became so overwhelmed that she instantly forgot about her father's instructions. She said proudly, it's no big deal, just watch me. At this time, she didn't realize that she couldn't control that power at all. So, the tragedy happened. Instead of being cured, the friend's complexion became increasingly ugly, with his skin turning purple and blue, as if he had been poisoned. Anyone could sense something was wrong from the look of pain on his face. What's going on? You, what did you do? Didn't I ask you to save her? What are you doing? It's over, Yun Xian'er, you've gotten into big trouble, go get the adults over. Faced with the strange looks and sudden accusations from her friends, Yun Xian'er was frightened and turned pale, and she involuntarily took a few steps back. He said in panic, it's not me, it's not me. I didn't mean it. Fortunately, adults arrived and rescued the child in time. Yun Li had no choice but to apologize in person and pay a large sum of medical expenses. When he returned home, he scolded Yun Xian'er severely. From that day on, many people looked at Yun Xian'er with eyes full of prejudice. No one dared to make friends with her, for fear of being accidentally harmed. Which? You evil BD! Go away and stop playing with her. You are a piece of trash who can't even use your own abilities properly. From then on, Yun Xian'er didn't dare to use her abilities for a long time. I locked myself in the room all day and became extremely autistic. And now, the same thing is happening again, how should she choose? Was she just going to watch Suyu die right before her eyes? Then what kind of person have I become? Suyu's unwavering voice seemed to echo in my mind. I won't give up on you. Keep going, we still have a long way to go. When you encounter an invincible enemy, you have no choice but to fight to the death. A crystal teardrop quietly slid down from the corner of Yun Xian'er's eye. Suyu achieved everything he said without exception. And what about her? I have overcome so many difficulties, how can I give up here? Suyu, I will never let you die here. Yun Xian'er wiped away her tears and gently placed her hands on Suyu's chest. She took a deep breath and said with determination in her voice, we must walk out of this darkness together. She kept telling herself in her heart, Yun Xian'er, quickly recall the feeling when the ruins technique was reversed. In order to dispel everyone's doubts and ridicule, haven't I been working hard until now? Concentrate and just think about saving people now. Even if it's just this once, use it successfully. Can't I just give up the other ability, she shouted in her heart. A faint light emerged from her hand. There seemed to be a glimmer of life in there, slowly emerging. Suyu felt like he had fallen into a deep ocean. His body continued to fall as if there was no end. As time went on, the feeling of suffocation became more and more severe, and he seemed to slowly lose control of his body. Many discordant voices began to sound in the deepest level of consciousness. "Suyu, Suyu. Ah! The teacher is calling you, why don't you stand up and answer? What's going on?" Suyu felt the scene suddenly change, and he was actually in the classroom of his student days. What triggered World War I? "Suyu. Can't answer? Then stand." Suyu couldn't control his own body. He seemed to have become a bystander, watching the trajectory of his life like a movie. Haha, a revolving lantern, interesting. The scenes began to change constantly. "Suyu, why haven't you handed in this month's report yet? Do you want to quit? Suyu, if you can't come up with 300,000 yuan as a betrothal gift, then we can only split it up. Xiaosu, you are almost 30 years old, why haven't you gotten married yet? Your parents are waiting to have a grandchild. How about I introduce someone to you? Your phone balance is insufficient, please pay in time." Seeing these, Suyu felt annoyed. These were all past events from his previous life. Could he just stop thinking about them? "I'm not dead yet. Want to take me, Suyu? No way. As long as he has a trace of consciousness, he will never give up." A raging fire ignited in Suyu's heart, so hot that it seemed to set the entire deep sea on fire. When a person's will is strong enough, perhaps a miracle will happen. At this moment, something in the sea of spirituality seemed to break free from its shackles and quietly emerged from its cocoon. The originally calm sea surface began to surge. The next moment, an unprecedented golden light suddenly burst out from Suyu's body, like a big sun, illuminating the entire chaotic space. In my mind, a long-lost mechanical synthesized sound rang out. But this time, his tone was not as calm as before, but contained a hint of surprise. "Congratulations host, you have activated the third hidden attribute. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.